Hey guys, sorry I'm a little tardy, but we're going to go right to it. This is the public hearing by the Senate and House committees in Wisconsin.
Good afternoon. Thanks for letting me testify. My name is Bart Williams, a Wisconsin resident. I was an election observer at Central Count in Milwaukee on Election Day. I also observed the so-called Democracy in the Park on October 3rd. I also participated in the recount in Milwaukee and Madison. I arrived at Central Count on November 3rd, 2020 at 6 a.m., but was not allowed by a posted guard in the lobby to go to the Central Count area floor, the fourth floor, until 7 o'clock. Then I had to wait in line, present photo ID, sign in, and await instructions from the ballot processing counting leadership staff. Thus, I was not able to actually start observing until at least 7:30 a.m. I was excluded from at least the first full 30 minutes observing the ballot processing counting. And by the way, I was in the first group up the elevators, so nobody could observe, of the observers, could observe those first 30 minutes. Claire Woodall-Vaugh, Executive Director of the Milwaukee Election Commission and in charge of Central Count, and many supervisors refused to allow me to remain in an unobtrusive area of the ballot processing counting location from which I reasonably could see and hear what was occurring for the vast majority, at least 2/3 of the tables being used for ballot processing and counting. Ms. Woodall-Vaugh and many supervisors made it difficult for election observers to truly observe all ballots being processed at all times, something the public was supposed to be able to do in the name of honest, free, fair, and transparent ballot processing and counting. First, they allowed only one chair for every 4 tables, and if more than one person was at that chair, standing or sitting, a supervisor made us go to the edge of the row of tables, which was even further away. For a visual of this, imagine that the chair is Omaha, Nebraska, and you have to try to simultaneously monitor Washington State, Maine, Florida, and California. Nobody can do this. You don't have eyes in the back of your head. Remember, if somebody was at that chair, you couldn't even stand near the chair. So it was all for one person or nothing, or you were pushed to the side. Also, there was a row of tables, so there was 13 feet about between these tables, the first row of tables. There was a parallel set of 2 more sets of tables, another 8 to 10 feet out from that, and another 8 to 10 feet out from that. And so by the time, and you weren't allowed to go down the walkways to those second and third rows of tables. So try to observe meaningful ballot details, such as whether there's a witness's address or a reason marked on the ballot for why the ballot was duplicated, such it was destroyed. You can't do it from those distances.
So there
what I'm saying is this:
meaningful observation.
At most, we were able to observe 25 to 33% of the ballots, at most, because the second and third rows of tables on each side of that wide aisle were barred from us from being able to access. You were simply too far away to be able to see anything, and they knew this. Another issue with that is indefinite confined. If you looked on the ballot certification, right near where the address is, it would say indefinite. If that person claimed they were indefinitely confined, you can't see that key detail at these distances. So we undercounted how many indefinitely confined ballots there might have been on the certificates because they didn't let us see them.
Wow.
So once you left that chair, which eventually you have to go to the bathroom, the Democrat runs and jumps in that chair, and you literally can only observe from the side, to continue my analysis, from the Atlantic Ocean. You can only maybe barely see Maine and Florida. You can't see the other tables. And so it was hours before I could even see those other 2 tables again. That's why I'm saying probably it's closer to 25% is the most we could see of all the ballots and certifications. Total quality concepts tell you that when you have a highly manual process like ballot processing and counting, there is significant variation in manual processes. Therefore, if we were not able to see most of the manual processes involved in these ballot processing and counting, it's more accurate to say we saw none of the process than to say we saw 100% of the process. So keep that in mind. Only 15 total observers from each party or independents were allowed in Central Count per shift. This was way too low of a number to allow anything approaching full observation access to all the tables. At best, we could maybe only cover or observe 20 to 25% of all the tables, of all the total tables, many dozens, with 15 observers, again, at best. The small total number of observers from each party was also a huge and I believe illegal access restriction. With 45 to 60 observers of each affiliation allowed in at one time, social distancing could have been maintained and transparency and lawful public access greatly increased. I hereby dispute as false any excuse by election officials to the contrary. Since ballot processing counting is a highly manual process, again, it was important that we got access to all of the process, but we didn't. So I picked up a form to start tracking the voter name and ballot ID number of each ballot certification envelope on which I saw issues. Occasionally, since they were talking through masks, and again, there's a team of tables and you're sitting behind them, you can't hear them all the time because they're talking towards each other and they're talking through a mask. So occasionally I'd have to ask, can you repeat that last name again? Or I didn't catch the last 3 numbers of that ballot number. They got annoyed at me and didn't want to do it, but they did it. Well, after 5, the person got up, got a supervisor, and I was barred from ever continuing my log again because they don't want us to have specifics on actual issues that we're seeing. Wow. That, again, is a problem. I think it's an illegality. Overall, Ms. Woodall-Vaugh and the rest of her staff were demonstrably hostile, including raising their voices, dismissing every single objection we had, and so forth, to our questions and observing in every interaction we had with them. They created a very hostile environment for re-election observers. Fairly early during first shift, Ms. Woodall-Vaugh twice made loud announcements to all people present that if ballot processors counters came across a ballot certification envelope with a missing address for the witness, they could go to the computer, look up the witness's address, and write it in.
Oh my God.
I immediately objected to this due to, among many valid other concerns, what about a witness with a very common name, such as John Smith? I was told by a supervisor that the worker could just assume it was the John Smith on the same street as the voter, or else the closest one to the voter's address. I said, what about if that John Smith lived across town? They didn't care. They were just going to put down the one that was convenient, and they didn't care that technically this is ballot tampering, and it's illegal in violation of both sections 6.87 subsection D and 6.87 subsection 9 of the Wisconsin statutes. So despite Dean Knutson's false testimony this morning, a formal complaint regarding this was formally filed with the Wisconsin Elections Commission by David Bolter on November 30th, 2 business weeks ago. My sworn declaration, which is evidence of wrongdoing, is part of that complaint. Mr. Knutson knows this and has for almost the last 2 weeks, but he still testified falsely anyway. You will hear from Mr. Bolter 2 speakers from now. The election officials told us not to expect many skinny or express ballots, but there were many. I estimate they comprised 25 to 35% of all the ballots I saw. I was told by a supervisor that express ballots came from 1 or 2 places, either building, and she didn't say the other one. She said they were for people who had a hard time writing. They could use a special keyboard or machine at one of those 2 buildings to generate an express ballot. This seems very suspicious to me. Unlikely there were that many people who actually had a hard time writing. Plus, 2 supervisors acknowledged there were a lot more express ballots than they had expected. Given the newness, large number, and highly susceptible to fraud and abuse nature of these express ballots, I would hope that they were audited closely and heavily during the recount, but I suspect that they were not. As a direct result of Claire Woodall-Vaugh's and other supervisors' acts, I was unable to fulfill my responsibilities or exercise my rights to meaningful observation as an election observer at Central Count in Milwaukee on Election Day, November 3rd. I also personally witnessed the Democrats' unlawful actions in at least 3 major ways during their scam Democracy in the Park here in Madison on October 3rd. And if you want details, you can ask questions, and I'll give you those 3 specific ways that I believe the law was broken. So overall, I most respectfully and urgently beg and plead of you as the Wisconsin legislature and our direct representatives of we the people to please do your sworn and sacred jobs. Ms. Bernier just mentioned it a bit ago, as our elected officials, legislators accountable to we the people, to uphold and defend not only the U.S. Constitution, but the Wisconsin Constitution as well. You must seriously question and challenge why we are not allowed to observe ballot processing and counting at Central County, Milwaukee. The reason? They were hiding their massive election law breaking and stealing the election from we the people. Please, please have courage. Do your jobs. Insist on a full forensic audit of all voting machines, especially Dominion ones, and voting records. Insist on a full forensic audit of all the ballot drop boxes and a full signature match of all absentee ballots. Properly and fully investigate the thousands of highly suspicious express ballots. Require a ballot application for every absentee ballot as required by Wisconsin law. Investigate and prosecute the tens of thousands of people who fraudulently claimed indefinitely confined, and for all those who lied, prosecute them for election fraud. Prosecute all who participated in this election lawbreaking, up to and including members of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Finally, once you have fully determined the truthful, accurate, honest, and legal winner of the November 3rd, 2020 election, President Trump and Vice President Pence, please, please do your sworn and sacred duty under Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution and select all 10 of Wisconsin's electors to the Electoral College for President Trump and Vice President Pence. You must get this election, November 3rd, 2020, right. We can't just say, forget this election, it doesn't matter, we'll fix it going forward. We're going to have so much problems in fixing election laws and whatnot if the wrong people are elected this time. There are many of us who were there at Stop the Steal on the Capitol steps on Monday that care about this election. And I feel very much worried that many in the legislature just want to say, what was done, moved on. This election needs to be gotten right. Or we're going to lose our precious paid for in blood for 231 years, free USA Republic forever. Article 2, Section 1 gives you, the legislature, the clear right to select Wisconsin's 10 electors to the Electoral College. Act 334, passed in 1973, may delegate selection to the winning party. But if the winning party is not truthfully, rightfully, or legally the Democratic Party, then they do not get to select Wisconsin's 10 electors. The legislature can and should then select all 10 electors for President Trump and Vice President Pence. According to relevant case law in 1892 and more recently in 2000, Bush versus Gore, a state's legislature can never abdicate its U.S. constitutional duty to select its electors, nor delegate such duty via statute, nor to any administrative agency. That is because this duty is specifically given to the state legislatures by Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, which has not changed. I am very concerned that some legislators may be searching for political cover to avoid standing up and doing the right thing. That would be a critical mistake for all of us, for our nation, and for all our individual liberties and the rest of our country and the rest of our history. I'm asking you now, please, I'm begging you with you, please have the courage, do the right thing. You have the authority, duty, and power to select Wisconsin's 10 electors. Please stand up now for honest, fair, and legally conducted elections. Your state, your nation, and we the people need you now to get the November 3rd, 2020 election right. Please do the right thing. Everything is at stake with this election. Thank you.
Very good. Our first question is going to come from Representative Motto.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Williams, thank you for being here. Can you help me understand how we go about doing that? Does that require just a resolution, in your opinion? And I certainly will take it up with Ledge Council, but how would one go about doing that? Do you have an opinion on that?
I think you could do a joint resolution that, after proper investigation, and I think this is a good step today, would allow you to make a determination that due to all of the irregularities, fraud, stealing, whatever you want to call it, cutting the corners, administrative liberties by the Wisconsin Election Commission, many of which I don't believe are authorized.
No, I get the background for why one would want to do it. I'm asking how. So you're saying we simply do that with a resolution, is what you're saying?
I'm saying that I believe that based on what you discover, that you cannot trust the current results of this election, and through a joint resolution, you can authorize the selection of the 10 electors for the Republican Party.
We'll, Mr. Chairman, we ought to get an answer on what is our capabilities, and I know we've consistently come up with questions as to can we do this or can't we do that, and I think there's a lot of us that are not attorneys that don't understand fully what we can or cannot do, or how we might go about doing that. I understand why one would want to do that. My question is, how would one want to do that if one would want to do that? And I don't think we have an answer on whether that's true. And no disrespect to Mr. Williams, whether he thinks that is statutorily available to us or not is not what I need is a better answer than that.
Yeah, so perhaps we could take a look at Ledge Council's memo and then maybe expound upon that. Maybe their memo isn't completely specific enough, and maybe we can kind of look beyond that. But
and it kind of goes to Mr. Sortwell's question. I mean, do we have the ability to get a preponderance of opinion or a preponderance of evidence from our attorney team rather than a single look at it? So again, no disrespect to a single attorney, but I think sometimes several set of eyes are better. And then the last point I would say, sir, is that time is of the essence. And so when might we be able to ascertain whether we have that ability or not?
We will ask for a Ledge Council to review that memo and see if they agree or not agree. And I would ask for that as soon as possible.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go to Representative Sortwell.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, I do have one suggestion if you'd indulge me for 30 seconds. This may be a little expensive, but recognize it would be a one-time cost, but think about this. I sent you a recent copy, many of you, a copy of the Epoch Times quoting Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. I believe that as an outside expert constitutional law lawyer, he would be able to provide you an idea of what you could do specifically to get that, because he stated in that Epoch Times article that this avenue is very much available to you. So why not pay the fee and get a true outside opinion?
Yes! With your stupid alleged counsel! These people!
All right, next. Yeah, Representative Sortwell is next.
Thank you. Are you aware of the lesser magistrate doctrine? Okay. Because the lesser magistrate doctrine basically holds that when one level of government fails in its duty, then the other level of government is responsible then to uphold what the other one should have done in the first place. So you're aware that if one area fails, it then becomes incumbent on the other one to uphold that. Are you aware of this doctrine?
I am.
Okay. So when Ledge Counsel was talking earlier, did you hear any consideration of that long-standing American doctrine that was the foundation of the American Revolution?
I heard him say a few things. It is concerning to me that that here we are this far after the election, and I understand there's lawsuits in the interim and whatnot, but that here we are, on December 11th, theoretically 3 days before before the Electoral College electors cast their vote, and we're just now uncovering some of the evidence that's key. I guess in the interim, I would suggest this: a joint resolution holds back on your electors from making their vote in the Electoral College on Monday, because you're in the discovery process of significant facts and findings of law breaking here. Just like the gentleman, I think it was Mr. Klein earlier, saying, look, we don't have to prove fraud. All you have to prove is that significant election laws were broken here in this election cycle. And clearly you have mountains of evidence, and I'll put my hand on the Bible in court any day and tell you what I just told you again and again and again, because I'm telling the truth. We have a lot of evidence here that things were done wrong, enough to easily change the outcome of the election.
All right, next we're going to go to Senator Darling.
Issue of what authority we have. We've really looked at this significantly, and it seems to me the U.S. Constitution gave the states, the legislatures, the authority to choose the electors. This legislature in Wisconsin changed our law to define that our selection of the electors would be by this group of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats chosen by the parties, and then that would constitute the electors, and that's who would cast our votes. So it's my understanding, unless we change our law,
No.
we aren't able to do what you're suggesting. That's very
Alberta,
frustrating.
You're wrong.
I think that you have to come to some conclusion about
No,
what
you're wrong.
we can do, because I don't want to give our citizens the thought that we can do more than we're doing, because we care about this election. But our law is the law, and I guess one of the things I'm most concerned about is all the lack of compliance with our statutes and our laws that we have put on the books specifically to control elections, or to put in statutes into law how elections should be handled. And it seems today and other days those issues, our statutes, are not being followed.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you, but I would say a couple of things. One, it always defaults to the Constitution the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Right.
Look up Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2. The legislature clearly has the duty, authority, and a power to select its electors. If there's a statute from Wisconsin, Act 334, passed in 73, in violation with that, ultimately the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, prevails over that. Secondly, I would argue that if you give the selecting of the electors power to the winning party, and you discover through your fraud investigation and forensic audits, of which many of us have asked for, I am 100% confident, and I'll eat my words if I'm wrong, that you'll find the winning party was truly the Republican Party, and all 10 electors should be cast for President Trump and Vice President Pence. Third of all, if you do find fraud, that's a high bar to get to. I acknowledge that. But think of when you buy a house, right? You have to fill out the real estate condition report. That's been a law since like 2005, I think. If you commit fraud on that and don't tell about 5 or 6 things, the roof leaks, the basement leaks, whatever, and I buy that house from you in reliance on you saying, nope, there's no problems in my property condition report, and later on I find out very quickly after that there were those problems, I can do one of 2 things. I can take it to court and make you take back your house in the extreme, but it's been done. Or I can go ahead and get all those issues fixed that you fraudulently did not report to me and charge you for all of those expenses. But in either event, the result is the same. Fraud sets aside my requirement to comply with that contract. In the same vein, I believe fraud would set aside any duty to delegate that power down to the winning party and take it back to the legislature, which you always have per the Supreme Law of Land, Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution.
All right, last question.
Come on now,
So I apologize. I just have a bit of a preamble there. So I think to reiterate the question then, or restate the question that I asked just previously, Mr. Chairman, is then I would want clarification on what Mr. Williams just said, that if that set-aside provision does exist. And then number 2, to Senator Darling's point, Mr. Williams used the word may, that we may do this or may do that, and that's different than shall. So I'd be curious to know if Senator Darling's right, that we statutorily move that into a different place, but if it does say may, then that would give me some different context. But that wasn't my question. My question was, what I would also like to know, what I'd really like to know, and let me just make sure I get this phrasing correctly, is that I'd also like an answer on the Milwaukee Election Commission. By design, is there any language in there that, because of their very existence, would give them the authority to think in any way or act in any way to choose or pick Wisconsin election laws? Whose jurisdiction would supersede anything that a Milwaukee Election Commission themselves would dictate? I'm curious to know, if there's any way that they would erroneously think that their laws and their procedures would supersede our own.
Are you speaking regarding the city or the county? Just to clarify things as best as I can for Ledge Council. I can only imagine they'll have to look something up for that.
Yeah, I'll get additional details with you.
Professor Eastman.
Go ahead.
We only
the Milwaukee Election Commission, the Milwaukee County Election Commission, now works under the authority of the county clerk. Back in the day, they took it completely away from the county clerk. You may remember voting, I think you might have voted in favor of putting that back in under the county clerk. So the county clerk and all municipal clerks have to follow state election law. And so when there's an election law, it'll say the county clerk shall and the municipal clerk shall and the election commission.
Got it.
So they are not exempt from any law that pertains to municipal clerks or county clerks at all. It's just that they have a commission that was appointed to sort of help us deal with the issue we see today. The large municipality with all of the responsibilities of running election is extraordinary. And the commission was really designed to oversee, to make sure all of the process and procedures and laws are followed. I am not sure that the commission understands how important their job is that they are kind of, the county clerk has the county caucus or canvass, the board of canvass. So it's a county clerk, a Democrat and a Republican board of canvass that makes sure that those election results are accurate. The election commissions in Milwaukee, and only Milwaukee, are to make sure that all of the processes and procedures and election laws are followed. And from what I gathered from the history behind it, and I don't know if Ledge Council can elaborate on it, but it's because it's the largest municipality with so many people, to make sure it's all done well. And I think they've failed.
Come on,
I think, Senator, your personal experience in that is really valuable.
Bernier.
All right, very good. We're going to go to our next witness, who is Paul Kramer. Thank you, Bart.
It's in these hearings. That's why you have to watch the whole thing from beginning to end. Because you watch the legislature just, look, she's fuming. Like, you watch them like they're on the edge, and then they're like, what in the world is happening in my state?
Right. Every time their little ledge council sits down, I just want to, I can't.
Is this him?
No. Oh, I don't know who this is.
Okay, it's a witness.
Yeah, no, the Ledge Council's 2 chicks.
With the masks.
Yeah.
Can we get a Republican on your Ledge Council?
No, I'm sure they are Republicans.
My name is Dr. Paul Kramer.
They're just weak.
I'm a resident of Lisbon, Wisconsin. I was a Trump campaign recount observer on Sunday, November 22nd. At approximately 10 a.m., myself and other Trump recount observers were led into the 3rd floor room of the Wisconsin Center where the count took place. While I was looking for my assigned table, I was listening to a proceeding that was being broadcast over the public address speakers in the room. The Board of Canvassers and the attorneys for the Trump and Biden campaigns were discussing the fact that ballots were being run through counting machines after the room had been cleared of observers at the end of Saturday evening's recount activities. I found this very disturbing, and knowing that evidence of wrongdoing has a tendency to get lost, I clicked on my camera on my phone and recorded the discussion. I forwarded this recording to Representative Brighteon for her attention, and she asked me to testify here today. I have a transcript of the recording here that I'd like to read from. This is one of the Trump attorneys talking during this conversation. It's, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put on the record my observations of what I saw last night. The board, I believe, around, it's intelligible, 8 o'clock-ish, when we called it a day, called it a night, we were told that there were a few ballots that were going to be run. It took me a while to gather my things and speak with various people. It was about 8:30 when a gentleman came to me and said, "Do you know they're still running ballots over there?" I said, "That can't be." He said, "Well, yeah, look." I walked over there with Mr. Voiland. When I got there at approximately 8:30, 2 machines were running. The observer said that the 3rd one had been running, but it was stopped, those machines. Mr. Voiland then went to try to locate someone and brought Mr. Christensen over. It was not until at least 8:35 that those machines were stopped. It wasn't a few ballots, and I understand that that was a reference to another machine at another location. I just want to put on the record that we were totally unable to observe any of that. I know the procedures. We just discussed them to be put in place, but it should not have happened, and the entire ward and everyone I am looking at was long gone by the time this all occurred, except for the clerk, as you're able to see. And this is just an indication that we have to tighten this ship up because we are floating in perilous waters here with these kinds of things going on. That was not a few ballots that were being run. It was stacks and stacks of ballots for at least a half an hour after the chair called adjournment. And that should not have happened. Goes on to explain more. I have a quote here from Christensen, the Board of Canvassers, the county clerk. He said, "I would agree. It was not this much. There were stacks and stacks, and that is not acceptable. I would agree." And they go on to talk about how they remedied that. I don't really understand from this how they actually did remedy that. This discussion, along with other experiences I had at the recount, gives me no confidence in the integrity of this recount. I observed many other concerning things. When we went into the Wisconsin Center, we were told we could not have backpacks, purses, or bags. When I went in there, I saw several Biden observers with large camping-style backpacks, walking through the facility. Several of them were congregating down by where the ballots were kept and stored. They would form, against social distancing guidelines, they would form a group which blocked the ability to see what was going on behind them. What went on behind there, I have no idea, but they should not have been allowed, in my opinion, to be anywhere near those places where those ballots were stored. I observed a woman on the floor counting ballots and election materials. which was very unusual since there were several empty tables in the room where she could have put those things on those tables to sort them out and also have observation. She was in an area that was difficult to see, and she had boxes kind of stacked up, so it was difficult to see what she was doing back there. She was taking the ballots and running through them, ballots and envelopes, it looked like. I couldn't tell from that distance. I asked several of the Trump attorneys, what is going on there? What is that procedure, and why is that happening? And they tried to investigate, and they got no answer as to what she was actually doing there. There were several boxes, large, that you would get reams of paper in an office setting, large boxes like that. I was told that the tabulators were the only people who were allowed to handle election materials, which meant that the election materials were put in sealed bags and bins, and they were transported around in those bins. When it came time to count them, they would take them out of the bags, count them, put them back when they were done inside the seals, and moved on. I observed a man walking, actually this happened several times, walking around with a handful of ballots throughout the center. I don't know where he was going or coming. What he did with those ballots, I was unable to see. It's a very big room and hard to see, but I saw this guy walking around with ballots. The only people who were ever told to social distance were the Trump observers. I have many instances where the people, Biden observers, were close together. The recount workers were touching each other. They were sitting next to each other. But yet the Trump ballot observers had to be, I'll defer a little bit to Mr. Spindell's testimony too. I agree with what you had to be 6 feet back in a chair through plexiglass with a ballot worker going that fast. And you were supposed to be able to see what was on those ballots. It was completely impossible. The only two things that you could say to the election workers was, I object, or please slow down. They would ignore anything else that you said to them. You could not ask them a question. You couldn't say anything else. If you said, I object, most of the time they would stop. Sometimes they would continue. But if you said, I object, they were supposed to stop. You had to go get an attorney. The attorney would come over, see what the issue was. They would have that ballot set aside or whatever the issue was, and they would continue. If you said slow down, sometimes they would slow down and sometimes they wouldn't. They would just continue taking the ballots across. I can't specifically attest to this, but I talked to other people who were there on Friday and Saturday, and they were telling me before I went in there that I should expect to walk into a room full of hate, which got my attention. They said that on Friday and Saturday, there were Biden observers who would scream obscenities in your ear while you were watching them, you do your job. There was very little police presence there. There were a few sheriffs walking around, but I normally at a large event like a Bucks game or something, you would see police officers at the doors in specific areas. So if you needed a police officer, if someone had a health problem, something, you could go to those areas. But there was nobody at any of those, any exit or entrance points. They were kind of wandering around. In the beginning of it, we were getting some last minute instructions from the Trump campaign lawyers on what we were supposed to be doing with the ballot counting, the ballot observations. And we had to move close to try and get them. It's a noisy area. So we were moving close. Well, then someone from a Biden observer would come and scream at us that we had to move back. So it was this game of moving forward and back for several minutes of trying to lean in to try and get the instructions, get screamed at, and then we would have to back up. At one point, a woman started screaming and very loudly at some people right next to me, and there was no police there, and so some Trump attorneys had to form like a wall to kind of keep her away from us in order for us to move away and continue the job, where that, if normally I would expect that type of behavior to be taken care of by law enforcement of some kind. It was a very disturbing experience. I have absolutely no confidence in the integrity of this recount. I can't even believe it happened. I can't believe that anyone could say in the United States of America that type of thing was allowed.
Wow.
I was sick for 2 days afterwards with a headache. I don't have headaches. I don't see how we can have a democratic republic if this type of nonsense is allowed to occur.
This is a very weighty testimony.
I was personally insulted by the comments in the media that said this was a smooth and fair procedure. I don't know, they were not in there. They were not in there, or they're completely lying. I think that's all I have to say.
Wow.
Do you have any questions? Seeing none.
Are you kidding?
Thank you, Dr. Kramer, for your testimony today. We've all been going for a while, so I think we're a little bit tired. We're gonna go to Odysee Masfaith3 next.
That has to be so disheartening to give that kind of a testimony and then no one has like a question
Or even a statement.
or a statement like,
Well,
I'm sorry this happened to you.
Do they have to go to a different committee? These are two guys that were really good on the side there.
I don't know. They go in and out, I'm sure.
Wow. So Ali tweeted out that airlines are packed from LA to DC for the March to Jericho with Stop the Steal signs.
I love it.
So
I cannot wait for tomorrow.
Good afternoon. My name is Odysee Masfaith3. I'm from Pewaukee, Wisconsin. Ooh, this is all wet. Before I forget, I just want to say, if you folks take the time to go to WEC's front page, on the left-hand column, there's a spot that says complaint. So that's where you put your complaints that Dean Knudsen was talking about. It gives you a little tiny square, and you might have a 3-page story that you want to tell to them. You can't look back to see what you already wrote. It's like impossible. The last time I did a complaint, I freehand wrote it and sent it to Reed, and I said, here's my complaint. I find your complaint node on your website ridiculous. Yeah. So just take a look at that, please. Okay. On Election Day, I observed at 4 polling locations in Milwaukee County. The first one was in Wauwatosa. The other 3 were in Milwaukee. When we asked the chiefs what they did with mail-in ballots that were brought into their polling place, they each had a different answer. So remember, this is Election Day, and we asked, what if somebody walks in with a mail-in ballot? What do you do? The first chief took them to the central count, which happened to be in the same building that he was in. At the second location, the next one spoiled the citizen's ballot and gave them a new ballot. At the third location, the chief refused to touch them, make them take him back to his car, and then when the person came back in, he gave him a ballot. The fourth person said he had not faced that problem yet and he'd deal with it when he got to it. So the third person was correct. He made the citizen actually take it back to his car, and when he came back in, he gave him a ballot. But it is clear, and I've been dealing with WEC a few years, WEC is responsible for creating this mail-in ballot fiasco and expecting clerks, chiefs, and poll workers to remember all of the directives, because there are so many, it's impossible. If you ever want to get a headache, go to WEC's website, go to clerk communications and listen to some of the communications. There are so many, it's impossible. If you ever want to get a headache, go to WEC's website, go to clerk communications and listen to some of the communications that WEC gives to their people. You can't understand it. It's literally impossible. Every time you folks did a law, WEC took that law and twisted it around until it met what they wanted to achieve. It was pretty unbelievable what they did with some of the statutes that you passed. Now, then I went out to Central Count that same day on Election Day. It was a farce. You could see nothing. It literally was a farce. I felt sorry for the man before me. I think he had these high expectations, but I know what kind of things go on in Milwaukee. I'm not going to re-explain to him what he talked about, how this was a huge room, like a football field room. And they had pods. They had tables set up in cubicle areas. So around the aisles, you could sort of see something at a table, but you could not see any of the interior tables. There were some chairs at some of the interior tables. There was a Democrat woman that sat there the whole day. And how did I know she was a Democrat? Because she never watched the proceedings. She looked at her phone all day. The only time they brought their head up is when they thought you were trying to stop a vote from being counted. Then we got their attention. I finally went and stood next to this woman, even though she was sitting in the chair, because I wanted to see what was going on in the interior. And it didn't take long for one of the directors down there to come and tell me, you cannot stand here. And I said, but I want to stand here. I want to view what's going on here. If you keep up with this, you're going to get kicked out of here. You're out of here. So I thought, okay, I won't get kicked out. So I moved on and went someplace else. But that was the kind of atmosphere that we were dealing with down there. And one thing I want to bring up before I forget, that night I went home and I watched the news. And in Madison, the observers there were allowed to be right up to the table. In fact, I saw them putting ballots and envelopes up against the scratched up plexiglass that I was forced to try and look through. So how come Madison got treated that way and we got treated differently? So here again, we do not have fair situations going on in this state. Now, I just also want you to be aware of this fact. Since, and I guess it was Kevin Kennedy in 2016, gave the clerks the right to write in an address that was missing from the witness address on the envelope.
Okay, probably like the fourth or fifth
But
time.
at that time, they could still use black and blue ink. It wasn't until this year that they were directed to use that red ink. And had they not used red ink, we never would have known that that was a directive that came from WEC. So I think it's important to realize that they knew they were doing something wrong. And they decided they'd put it in red because they didn't want to have to deny that there's something odd there. All I can tell you is it wasn't until this election that they were made to write those addresses in red. So try and figure that one out. Okay, so then we're moving on to my experience at the recount. Once again, it was a farce. 5 feet away from the edge, 3 feet away from the edge of the table, and then there was this scratched up plexiglass. You couldn't really see anything that was going on. I tried positioning my chair to a better position so I could see, and that is when the bullying and the badgering started. My chair was not positioned correctly. My toes were over the yellow line. My knees were over the yellow line. There were about 5 Democrats that started picking on me, and I mean picking on me. I hardly had a chance to even observe. They just kept at it. When I initially got there, I've been going to these things for a long time. So whenever I go, I sign in as an independent because I'm not talking for the Republican Party. And if I get in trouble, I don't want it to reflect on the Republican Party. So I've always signed in as an independent. I was told that there were 3 chairs in front of the tables. And one was for an independent, and one was for a Republican, and one was for a Democrat. Okay, so I sat in the independent chair. And I took the chair, but somehow the 5 goons that were intimidating me, when they found out I was an independent, their heads exploded. Then they really got bad. Why was I talking to the Republican attorney? Why was I doing this? Why was I doing that? I tried to explain to them that as an independent, I had the right to support the candidate of my choice. That didn't mean I was apolitical. The intimidation just got worse, so I decided this is hopeless. So I left. And I thought, okay, maybe if I just go to another part of the room. So I decided to go and watch the Milwaukee Election Commission for a while, because they were making they were holding court in the middle of the room. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go up there and just sit and relax and calm down. All of a sudden, I heard my name over the loudspeaker through the whole building. I never did hear what I was being accused of, but I was so incensed. I was shocked. I approached the table. I said, my name is Odysee. You just mentioned my name. What did I do wrong? And I said, I'm horrified by the fact that you said my name over the loudspeaker without even talking to me first. They totally ignored me. I went and sat down. The chief judge, whatever his name is, he said, well, we've got to put a stop to this. Let's vote on removing the third chair from in front of every table. So, of course, the commission is a 2-1, so the two people voted, and then they made a big deal about this workman coming out and getting all the third chairs. Actually, it helped our guys get a little bit closer to where they could see better, so it was okay. I wasn't too upset about it. The next day I did go back, but this time I was over against the far wall watching the big machines count ballots. But one of the goons was about 20 feet away. Odysee, I'm watching you. Okay, here it started all over again. Then I saw one of the other people that were giving me a hard time. What are you doing here? You got kicked out yesterday. I politely said that I did not get kicked out. I left of my own volition. All in all, the recount was a total waste of time, but it needed to be done so that the lawyers could go ahead, could move forward with doing whatever they had to do. Just got a couple of other comments. I have a couple things that I want you to be aware of. Here's another case of breaking the law.
Every Democrat-held city in
Wisconsin
America.
State Statute 6.86 sub 6 that says that if you received a ballot by mail and you spoiled it, you spilled coffee on it, something happened to it, the citizen is required to return the spoiled ballot to the clerk's office before they can receive a new one. But if you take a look on WEC's website under spoiled absentee ballot guidance, there is a statement now that says you can spoil your ballot in writing by mail or email to the clerk. When did that happen? Every other situation, you spoil a ballot, you got to either mail it back into the clerk or you got to take it personally before they will give you another one. So how many people called in, never really spoiled the first ballot, got to vote. I mean, they're handing ballots out like they're candy, is what's going on up there. Now, last Friday, let me preface this with this. Okay, when I was observing at the recount, they brought out a wad of ballots. You know when you go to the Office Depot and you get a new ream of paper to put in your printer, and the ballots are perfectly in the plastic container, and you got to fan them a little bit so they loosen up? They brought out a wad of ballots, and I said to myself, those don't look like they've touched human hands. And I looked at them a little more and I thought, well, they do have the creases in. And then I did ask Claire, I said, did you fold these pre-fold for the, well, some of them we pre-folded. Okay, so I thought, well, maybe since the creases were all identical, maybe it does look like a pristine, but it just looks so perfect. So I did watch those being counted over at when they went to the big machines to be counted. But that still kind of haunts me, like, why did those ballots look so perfect? So last Friday, I did an open records request of Milwaukee County, who now has custody of the ballots and the envelopes and everything else. I have done this before in other years. I wanted to look at the physical properties of the ballots, the texture of the paper, the creases, the perfect bubbles. I wanted to actually count a couple of wards. I was told I would never be permitted to handle the ballots, ever. Now, I've heard and I've seen on TV that in other states, people are being allowed to look at the ballots and touch them and count them and do whatever. I am hoping that maybe one of you could help me get in to see some of these wards. I've got some numbers. So if anybody's interested in taking that a step further, I still cannot believe that in the interest of fair and honest elections, WEC did not stop the donation of millions of dollars to 5 of our cities. Did you in the legislature know that this was going on? Did you know? This is blatantly apprehensible. They were buying votes. This should have never been allowed. Who should have been the person to stop this? Who should have been the person to stop this? Who do we go to? What do we do? It's pretty unbelievable. Now, how do we correct this mess? I have an idea that I hope you will take me up on. Is there a page I can hand these out? I don't know if I have enough copies. It has been mentioned to do a forensic audit. You want to make a few more copies? I don't think I have enough. One of the ways that you could start a forensic audit, and you can get the results from it in a couple of days. I know it's Friday, you won't maybe get the results till Monday, but there's such a thing as the registration list alerts. These include names, addresses, and birth dates of every person in the statewide system. This list is a result of an instantaneous check that occurs when a registration is entered into the system. So in other words, as during in-person absentee and on election day when people fill out the registration form, it goes to the clerk's office, and then they have people there that are typing all the information that goes right into the system. But there's an instantaneous check that determines if that name is already in the system, or it looks like that name's already in the system. It also goes through a death database to see if that person has died in Wisconsin, and it goes through a felon list. So this registration list alert, if one of those 3 things waves a red flag, it goes to that municipality. And these registration lists alert, I think, occur at the very end of in-person absentee and on election day. Now, the clerks have 45 days to get all their registration information into the system. And I think it's December something, it's in a few days that their 45 days is up. But I would say take what's in the system and find out how many new registrations are either deceased, lots of duplicates, deceased felons or duplicates. I have here November 3rd, 2018, 3 days prior to the election, the number of registration list alerts in the system was a little over 8,000. On December 6th, after the election, there were 25,000 registration list alerts in the system. So there are a ton of people voting at the end of in-person absentee and on election day that shouldn't be. So that's number 1. All I'm asking you to do is go to WEC and say, of the registrations that have just been put in, or you can start from October 1st, how many of them are in the registration list alert system? So you can find out, are they duplicates, are they deceased, are they felon? And remember, these people all got to vote. They all got a ballot and voted, okay? Another thing in a forensic investigation is the DMV check or the Social Security check. The DMV check is what is mandated by HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, to look to see, check the name, birth date, and identifying number of the citizen. So do not confuse this with ERIC. ERIC looks at name and address. The DMV check looks at name, birth date, and identifying number. And when I say identifying number, I'm talking about the driver's license, the state ID, or the last 4 digits of the Social Security number. So just so you know what kind of numbers I'm talking about, November 3rd, 2016, an open records request was made of WEC for the number of DMV non-matches in the system, 154,000. That's how many people we're talking about have failed this DMV check. Who doesn't remember their name, their birth date? Your driver's license number never changes. Okay, so WEC says there's spelling mistakes, whatever. So when a DMV check fails, it gets sent back to the clerk for the clerk to go and look at her paperwork, make sure she spelled the name right, make sure she got the birth. They recheck it and they send it back through the DMV check. So please, if you're going to do a forensic audit, do these two things. I hope you all got the piece of paper that explains this. Another thing I would hope you would look at is the indefinitely confined list. I don't know when the kerfluffle started. Was that like March 1st when those two county chairs said, oh yeah, you can sign up for this? I would say look and see who all signed up for the indefinitely confined list from March 1st up to the election. See how many of them voted. The people that are really in need, who are in home, can't get out, they were already signed up. Maybe there were a few of them in the beginning of the year that signed up. But this indefinitely confined list, I am actually surprised that when those two county chairs were called on the carpet, that we didn't erase all those names from the system and say, sorry, folks, you're going to have to vote by mail if you think you have COVID or you don't want to come in. They should have been removed. Their vote should have not counted. So anyway, I hope you do this forensic audit. I think it would be a good start, and it's computer runs. So all you do is give the request to the WEC, and hopefully on Monday you'll have some interesting numbers to take a look at to see, okay, how honest was this election? You know, we're looking at people who failed, their name, their birth date, and their identifying number. And then the registration list alerts are duplicates, deceased, and felon names. So, let's see.
We have 1 more minute.
Okay, thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
All right, let's go to Representative Sortwell. Very quickly, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. No, I just had one really brief question because, of course, a lot of the restrictions that were in place for the observers in Milwaukee, you know, were put in place arguably, you know, for COVID or whatever, even though, as you pointed out, Madison was not doing the same thing. So, and then you brought up the fact that even if you had a knee over the line or the toe over the line, they started harassing you. So I guess my question is, are you aware of how much more severe knee transmitted COVID is?
I said to them, I don't think my knees are going to get COVID. I did say that to them.
All right, Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ma'am, I wanted to ask this question earlier, and maybe there were other people testifying that could answer this better than you, but I didn't always have an opportunity. And the question I want to ask is, there was an overvote in many districts, many precincts in Milwaukee, 200% of the people voting, sometimes more. Do you have a feel for, you know, how this transpired?
Knee transmitted
Well,
COVID.
I can tell you this, it didn't happen on election day because the polls were not that busy at all.
Okay.
It happened during in-person absentee.
You know, and maybe we'll have an opportunity that we'll have someone else that might be able to speak to that too.
The polls were not
Thanks
busy
anyway.
on election day.
Sure.
Of course they weren't. Only 30%.
All right, very good. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we're going to talk to David Bolter.
That was made. Are you aware how much more dangerous knee transmitted COVID is? You have your toe over the line, your knee over the line. COVID.
Oh my gosh.
Before we go to David Bolter, while we clean up, Ledge Council looked into some of the requests that Representative Monaco and Representative Sortwell made, and they would like the floor. You just take it.
I'm gonna go for a walk.
There you go.
So we were asked to give an additional opinion on whether the legislature has a role in selecting the presidential electors. And my colleague and I have consulted. We've also consulted with the attorneys at LRB, and we are all in agreement that under the current state statutes, there's no authority for the legislature to appoint the presidential electors.
Wow.
It's absolutely true that the U.S. Constitution does say that state legislatures have the authority to direct how presidential electors are appointed. And in Wisconsin, the way that the legislature has chosen to do that is to enact laws saying that the presidential...
You know what? She's lying. Wait, you know what? I'm just not going to say what she's saying. So we're just not going to hear what she's saying.
Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine with me. Yeah, no, and here's the good news. Here's the good news. Those that are, let me turn off the microphone. Those that are asking those questions of her know full well And they will continue to bring the evidence to the rest of the committee. I know they will.
Professor Eastman is a constitutional scholar. I do not believe they're constitutional scholars.
Year Army Colonel that have served this country both in regular Army and Army Reserve. I was also an Inspector General.
I'm going to pause right here. So what she's saying is, it doesn't matter how much fraud there is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The Constitution and even the state Constitution, there's no remedy for you.
Yeah.
Because if the Democrats are in power and we steal the election, there's nothing you can do.
That's exactly what she's saying.
So that puts people in an extreme bind. And so you need to have Professor Eastman in and other lawyers, because that's why these kind of things go to the Supreme Court.
Right.
Right. And that's why the Supreme Court has to rule on the side of the Constitution. It's a plenary thing where you can take it back at any time.
And I want to encourage you guys watching this, don't be disappointed because this stupid ledge council comes up and says something that other people who have constitutional backgrounds that are lawyers and judges have completely disagreed with.
Exactly.
Okay. We aren't the only people watching this hearing. And those that have the authority, have the know-how, have the means, will be reaching out to these representatives who are asking these questions and making it very clear and very plain.
What we kept seeing in Georgia and other people questioning, saying, and the tip was this, but if those charged with the electors, the state constitution says this is how we appoint our electors because the people vote.
Yeah.
Okay. But if the other legislation
don't hold up their end of the agreement,
if the other parts of the Constitution are not held up,
right,
then the vote does not count.
Right.
And so
Or the Army.
And Bert laid that out really well. And I think anybody that listened to Bert, I think it was Bert Williams, about with if you've purchased a house sort of thing, when he made that comparison, anybody with half of a brain in the room went, oh, ding.
Explain what he said about purchasing a house.
Oh, well, if you purchase a house, you sign an agreement that I am saying that I don't know of any of these issues. And then if, 6 months into it, the basement floods, the roof leaks, or whatever, then that contract is null and void. And you either have to buy the house back or pay to have those problems fixed. So in this instance, the legislature either takes the power back or the votes get fixed.
Right.
In the 32 years of service here and abroad. I was employed as one of the approximately 3,000 poll workers at the 2020 national election. In particular, I was assigned as a paid ballot counter. Thousands of ballots that came to the central count went through my hands. My entire period of work lasted 3 shifts. I got there at 5:30 the morning of the 3rd, and I stayed till approximately 1:45 the morning of the 4th. I assure you I will be brief. During the 3 shifts, I did characterize the entire environment as being dismissive in terms of asking questions, of getting challenges answered, getting objectives answered. I did see thousands of ballots that had the pre-printed 10-day residency requirement. I think that's what's already been discussed about statute 6.87 and also 6.15. Suffice to say, I saw a lot of red ink in there. And all the points that I'm making today, as I need to mention, has obviously been submitted in my notarized affidavit. When I objected to ballots with the red ink inserts and crossouts, I obviously gave my objection to the executive director, Ms. Woodall-Vog, and was repeatedly ignored. I objected to what looked like countless occasions unconfirmed witness addresses on ballot envelopes. I saw their signature and I saw their address. Sometimes different ink, sometimes different handwriting all together. That's big. I saw many ballot envelopes that had no signature in the witness signature line, but the signature was obviously placed someplace else. When I did place the objection several times, Ms. Woodall-Vog basically announced to the entire 4th floor that if there is a second signature anywhere on the envelope, that was considered admissible. Many of the ballot envelopes I received were already opened or unsealed on arrival. I stated my objections as well, which were basically cast aside. I'm guesstimating upwards of 15 to possibly upwards of 20% were in that state. I contend that the election observers were required to, as mentioned before by obviously Mr. Williams and other people here today, that they were up 15 to 20 feet away. A lot of them had binoculars. I don't think that really is the intent of the observer role that day, but that's where it was. They were all had the orange cones away from the pod tables, and there was no way that they could have 100% accurate proof of being able to do their job, period. At approximately 1 in the morning, an announcement was made that a truck or trucks full of ballots were arriving shortly. While I did not physically witness the arrival of the trucks, this activity was similar, as we've heard in days to follow, systematic fraud claims in other states. In summary, the idea of systematic corruption is still a matter of debate. It's not yet factual in the sense of an established illegality. That can only happen in a criminal court. But for the sake of the Republic, the ideas of the nation which I fought for 3 decades, both here and abroad, and to the voice of the American people to elect their leaders, I hope it does. That concludes my presentation, subject to questions.
Oh, very good.
Very good. Well, first, thank you for your service to our country. Second, do we have any other questions?
Where'd everybody go?
All right. See no other questions? Thank you for your service.
I think he's disappointed there was no questions.
All right, next we're going to hear from Cindy Boble.
Who else gonna, like, it seems like, where'd the chairs go? I mean,
Well, she just came back.
okay.
Kathy, I think her name is. I think that Wisconsin is one of those states where they're going to wait for one of the other states to do stuff.
You ready? Sure. All right.
And once they do, then they'll fall in line.
Supreme Court's gonna rule. They don't even need this, but it's good to get it out.
It is good to get it out.
First off, I want to give you a little background. I am
I'm
retired.
at the Supreme Court of
For over
Wisconsin.
40 years, I worked in the commercial insurance industry and was trained and employed to analyze, assess, and view information. So I thought it would be very helpful for me, as someone that has looked at information and analyzed information my whole life, evaluating risk and exposure, putting up millions of dollars, to honor my state and observe. I did forward, I don't know if it was passed out, a list of where I was and the hours I put in.
Eat them.
I would think the Election Commission would be interested in what I saw, since I put in over 50 hours.
Wow.
I was at absentee voting, otherwise known from the website as voting by absentee ballot, at 6 locations, 8 different times, totaling about 27 hours. Those include City of Milwaukee, Racine, and Waukesha. On election day, I spent over 9 hours in Wauwatosa at City Hall, where there was 2 polling places and central count. On the recount, I spent over 15 hours observing in the city of Milwaukee. So I have a broad perspective of the things that happened. I did not previously do any poll watching or observing, but I did do the training multiple times, in person and online. And being in the commercial insurance industry, which is probably just slightly below the legal industry as far as details and procedures, I felt pretty confident. After the first 2 or 3 places that I was at, I was astounded that every single location, and this preceded, did everything differently. I've heard many elected officials say, well, it's all the same at all the locations. You have a paper ballot and you can just count them. It is extremely different at every location
That's very interesting.
I was at, excluding recount, which is a different situation. And I can go through during absentee voting. City of Milwaukee Cannon Park Pavilion used electronic, or some people refer to them as skinny ballots, I think. Waukesha used paper ballots. Zablasky Library, I hope I'm not slaughtering that name, used electronic or skinny ballots. This is all pre-election day. Festival Hall in Racine, paper ballots. Bayview Library on Kinnickinnick, electronic skinny ballots. Festival Hall again, paper, and Broadway, City Hall in Milwaukee, electronic skinny ballots. Every single place did registration, ballots, signatures, gluing the envelopes differently. Some places they used Elmer's glue to glue the envelopes. Some of us can remember back to our childhood. I like the smell of glue. I remember Elmer's glue can very easily be opened. And since I was at Central Count, nobody opened the envelopes via the glue flap. They were all slid open. And they were slid open very fast. So if anything had been adjusted, I'm not saying it was, but no one would ever see it.
Why would you glue an envelope closed?
The other thing I found very interesting is when I've asked about procedures that weren't being followed, such as using the ineligible voter log, announcing name and address, verifying proof of residence. A lot of these things were loose, to be kind. When I would bring something to the attention of someone pre-election day, I was told, mainly in the city of Milwaukee and Racine, and I'm going to quote, and it was almost verbatim per word at each location. Mind you, that's 6 different locations, 6 different days, 6 different times. Let me get my quote correctly. We do not have to follow those procedures now. That is only done on election day. I said, well, I looked at my guidelines and it says they're supposed to announce their name and address, and you're supposed to look at the ineligible log. They told me they did not have to. I looked up the statute, which I'm very familiar with, being an ex-workers' compensation underwriter who deals with the statute of the state for workers' compensation frequently. And if you are ever tired, you can read statutes and that puts you right to sleep, especially insurance ones. So I pulled out the exact statute area, which was section 6.79, subchapter 2A, which said you had to announce your name and address. She said she would call the officials in the city of Milwaukee and confirm. She never got back to me on that. I then asked her, this is in Kinnickinnick and Bayview Library. I then said, no one is checking ineligible voter log. She said, we don't have to. Again, the verbatim, we only do that on election day. She did, to her credit, Louisa, the chief inspector, did check with the voter election people in the city of Milwaukee. She came back to me and told me, again, quote, they forgot to bring me an ineligible log. Now, remind you, I was there on October 29th. That was a long time after they'd been processing votes without the log. I did stay there 2 to 3 more hours. They were supposedly bringing the log.
Okay, so what we need right now, and this is a public hearing.
what you need is a lawyer to jump in and to say, this violates the Equal Protection Clause in the U.S. Constitution. Because while she was in the Milwaukee area, I guarantee you that all the rules were being followed out in the Republican red counties that had one drop-off per 1,100 square miles. Okay? Equal Protection Clause with the Zuckerberg money. We learned a lot today, more than we have learned in a lot of these hearings. About, especially, I'm now convinced about the Zuckerberg money. I'm now convinced about it's a steal. It was set up as a steal by the Democrats, and so if we get kicked off because we're literally streaming this on the site that spent the money to do this stuff,
right?
So if we're gone, I understand why.
That's an excellent point.
Because you would want to cover that up. Why would you want anyone to know this stuff? Which is why the YouTube ban is, because they're literally covering themselves. This is a crime. The crime.
Well, we don't have any evidence of YouTube money funneling. We have Zuckerberg money funneling. I think the argument could be made that the interests are similar, but as far as the actual facts of money, we don't have any facts of YouTube.
You're right.
Money
I'm trying to
funneling.
be careful with way I say. Thank you for that, Michelle. But if for some reason we get kicked off because we're streaming a public hearing, we know why. Because of the money going around. They wrote a book. This is how we do it. The ground game in these 5 cities.
Right.
So, and what you're hearing her say is that the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution was not followed.
Right. And I want to remind you guys at the beginning, that man that spoke,
to please follow us on Bitchute and Parlor and our website, resistancechicks.com.
Resistancechicks.com, yeah. I think the first thing is supposedly they would just remove the video from today.
Yes.
To start with, until they start really ramping things up. But to remind you, the guy at the beginning was like, there have been none of these complaints like we saw. All of our poll watchers were allowed to watch and observe. There was no bullying. There was all the signatures matched and all this. And we held the tightest ship election you ever saw. We have 0 complaints of this and 0 complaints of this and yada, yada, yada. And I love that he was the first person. Because what would he have said if he was the last?
I really wish he would have been last.
Because he would have had to rewrite his speech.
I never went back to that location.
I do not know, but I do know I made an effort to reach out to the attorneys to see if they were going to request it for discovery. And I did.
Right about there.
And central count.
That's good. Well,
on the recount, I spent over 15 hours observing in the city of Milwaukee. So I have a broad perspective of the things that happen.
This is the beginning of her testimony.
Each location, remind you that's 6 different locations. Okay. State Farm, if you ever get a mortgage or a student loan or a credit card, they will snail mail you all kinds of offers for insurance with your name and address. That was used frequently. I brought this to the chief's attention.
So
and
what
he
she's
said
saying
they're
is that you can use anything in the mail for...
I then asked her, this is in Kinnickinnick and Bayview Library. I then said, no one is checking ineligible voter log. She said, we don't have to. Again, the verbatim, we only do that on election day.
That's what I think.
To do 2 times. No, because we're well beyond that.
She
Just
did.
Change the timing on it.
To her credit, Louisa,
Fast forward a little bit.
the chief inspector,
Call
did
right here.
check with the voter election people in the city of Milwaukee. She came back to me and told me, again, quote, they forgot to bring me an ineligible log. I'll remind you, I was there on October 29th.
It's a great show.
It was a long time after they've been processing votes without the log. I did stay there 2 to 3 more hours. They were supposedly bringing the log. It never appeared.
All right,
I never went back to that location. So what happened after that, I have no idea.
Normal.
The other things I saw, I will generalize for you.
Probably.
Proof of residence was very loosely used.
No, that's you just slowed it down. Can you follow directions? Normal's in the middle.
In fact, in Wauwatosa on election day, there were 2 polling stations in the library there. They were not using correct proof of residence information.
There it is.
I caught them a lot of times using, and I blacked out my name, Geico, State Farm. If you ever get a mortgage or a student loan or a credit card, they will snail mail you all kinds of offers for insurance with your name and address. That was used frequently. I brought this to the chief's attention, and he said they're not supposed to use it. Are they using it? And I said, yes. He walked over there. The gentleman didn't know what was supposed to be used and what wasn't. I gave him my cheat sheet out of my packet of information to use for the rest of the day. I can't tell you if the training was bad or if it was on purpose. It's probably, like earlier said this morning, both. I was very disheartened of what happened and very disappointed. I challenge you as the election commission to be the eyes and ears like I was. That's what we did in my industry. We would secret shop, basically, what was happening. It was very intimidating and threatening and bullying. Racine was the worst. This was in Festival Hall. I have affidavits that was also handed out that you can look at if you wish, that I've done and notarized. And I drew a picture and I used their website, Festival Hall's website. The interesting thing was they put us in a corner. This is a 15,700 square foot building, so there's plenty of room. I wanted to get closer so I could see. So depending on what I was looking at, I was anywhere from 20 to 50 feet away from everything. They finally let me go a little bit closer to the registration table. I can only see one of four. I was trying to hear and listen, and I must have accidentally, they had tape, put part of my foot over the taped line. Okay, you know, I wasn't paying attention to my foot. It was part of my foot. The clerk came, well, actually the assistant clerk, sorry, came and started yelling at me in my face. And I told her I was trying to listen, and I saw them not using the ineligible voter log. She said, yes, they were. And I said, I hate to bicker with you, but they weren't. Their person, their phone have been on top of that log for the last 2 hours, and their person phone hasn't moved. So I don't know how those last 3 people got checked. She then proceeded to get in my face and wanted to know if I was threatening her, and she was going to get the city clerk. I said, by all means, go get the city clerk. She came back with the log that I have to sign and wanted me to print my name so it's more legible. I said, sure, fine, I'll print it. Why do you want me to print it, I asked. She goes, we are going to call ahead to all the other polling locations, and if you show up there, you will be kicked out. I don't know if you saw me sit down. I'm only 5 foot tall. Maybe in my prime I could have tackled somebody, but probably not now. The other interesting thing about Racine, which doesn't come up a lot, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Madison comes up a lot. The interesting thing about Racine, I was there twice, and appropriately so, once on Halloween. They had moved the whole city hall of Racine down to this festival hall, curtained it off. And there was another observer with me kind of asking the city clerk, Tara, not sure how she pronounces it, why they moved the whole city hall down there. And I said, perchance is your city hall under construction? Because I was just at Waukesha a few days ago. It's under construction. It's kind of a mess. No, it's not under construction. It's just easier for us to have city hall down here. Well,
I want to just jump right in because I appreciate everybody watching right now. And the chat is the chat. It can be really crazy. So one thing, you can leave pretty much any comment you want in the comment section after the video. Okay? Barring horrible swear words or violence, we leave those comments. If you're in the chat, we try to make the chat, because it's real time, family friendly. However, I understand that there are heated debates that go on. We want to make sure that people feel comfortable to voice their opinions. So I ask the moderators not to ban, not to censor people who have differing views. You can have differing views on anything. Just try not to make personal attacks. When it comes to moderators, we pick a moderator because they align with who we are. It's like having a team captain, and then some lieutenants.
Sure.
Okay, so you would beforehand, you would have a conversation with your team captains, and you would say, okay, team, this is the game plan for this game. And so you stay on. It doesn't mean that you can't have any differing views at all. It is a restriction on your speech if you have a rent, and that's the trade-off, okay? And so I don't expect anybody to come into this chat and just agree with everything that we say. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
Okay, you got to be able to debate. You have to be able to talk these things through. But just think of the moderators as they're on we're on a team, because this is Resistance 6 channel, and so we pick moderators to be on our team. Who will represent us and who kind of know our viewpoints.
If you were out campaigning for someone, okay?
Right.
And let's say Leah's running for Congress, all right? And we all wear Leah for Congress shirts, okay? And we have somebody on our team that's going out handing out pamphlets for Leah for Congress, and yet we've got somebody on our team wearing our shirt, Leah for Congress, and they're going out saying, actually, I don't really like Leah for Congress.
Or I disagree with them on this. I disagree with them on this.
Right.
I disagree with them.
Or Leah for Congress, but she's wrong here and here and here and here and here. It doesn't really work out that way.
Right. And so you pick people, if you're running for office or whatever, who are going to, and even if they disagree with you, they know that they have to censor their own views,
right?
Because they're representing you. It's being a team, okay? And then you disagree in private.
Right.
Okay. And then you bring forth one view. So I just wanted to let you know how that works.
And I actually asked this person in the chat, and I don't mind calling you out, Stuart. I said, message me in private. We'll deal with this later. You wanted to do it in the open. We're doing it in the open. I love you, my brother, across from the pond. You know I love you.
You're here all the time.
Just disagree.
We appreciate everything that you've done. We appreciate your voice. And so in order to say what we've done this for other moderators. If you want to say whatever you want to say, then you don't have to be a moderator. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy you as a person. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy your counter, whatever you want to say, or
whatever
that you're saying. It's just you're just not kind of on the Resistance Chicks for Congress page, and so it's like, okay, that's what you chose, and that might be more freeing for you. And that should be more freeing for you to be able to say whatever you want. If I'm going to go be a moderator for Lynette Zhang, I'm not going to disagree with her in the chat.
Exactly. That's a really... Okay. I would never be a moderator for anybody's channel whose opinions I disagreed with. I just wouldn't do it.
Here's the thing. If I go to another YouTube channel and they give me the wrench, and there are a lot of people that I appreciate, but I disagree with on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I may mildly kind of disagree here and there, but I recognize that by taking that position, I have to become a little bit nonpartisan.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like an election commission. You have to kind of be a little bit nonpartisan in the wrenching. And so I guess I'm just asking for our moderators to do what I would do. I'm Lynette Zhang's moderator. I realize if I'm not her moderator, I can say whatever I want. I think you're wrong here. I think you're wrong here. And Patriot Gallery, she goes on a lot of channels. I think you're wrong here. But I mean, even she would agree if she was a moderator on a channel, she would be like, okay, I may disagree, but I have to hold that back. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We appreciate everybody. We appreciate our moderators.
Hang on. She's telling me that we're muted.
No sound? Resistant. We're muted?
No. Okay, sound is fine here. It must be on Adeline's end.
Okay. So anyways, I just want to throw that out there. And so we try to pick the moderators that kind of tend to, towards our where we're thinking. We don't want to censor anybody.
Well, and Stuart's biggest issue is he doesn't like Trump, and that's fine. You totally have every right to not like Trump, okay? Right. But you are incredibly disrespectful to Trump, and we love him, and he's our president, and we hold that really sacred here.
Yeah.
So I cannot have a moderator in our chat disrespecting our president when our viewers come here who love our president. Like, it's just not going to happen.
And here's the thing. Especially right now, tensions are really high.
Yeah.
Emotions are really high. And the mainstream media is so dark and so evil. And why would you even want to listen? I don't even know why you'd want. I'm glad that you're here. But this stuff is showing that the Democrats have tried to steal an election from the president of the United States.
Now, exactly. And I would like to state for the record that Stuart has been an incredible support and encouragement to our channel from day one, which is why, Stuart, you had a wrench, okay?
Yeah.
I don't like airing family stuff on air, so I asked for it private, and you said, no, I'm not going to do it. And then I wasn't really going to, Leah's like, okay, we're talking about it out in the open, everybody's seeing it. People on other platforms are going to be like, this is really stupid. I wasn't there on YouTube, and it was live. But honestly, guys, when it comes to our moderators, I don't really have a personal relationship with most of our moderators. I think that almost all of them in here could raise their hand and say, Michelle and I never message privately. Ever. So if I ever have an issue with someone in the chat, it's a big deal. If I say, please message me afterwards, that's a pretty big deal. And if you're not willing to do that, then you definitely can't be a moderator on the channel, as much as I love you. And that's just a fact.
We gotta be on the same team.
We have to be on the same team.
So we love you and God loves you and you can hate Trump all that you want.
Yes.
But I've been telling people when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, this is too important.
It's this is a really deep spiritual battle that's happening for the heart and nation of our country.
Right.
And so if you disagree with it, that's fine. But you can't represent us in disagreeing, because this is a spiritual, and we have drawn a line in the sand, and we have put our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor on the line for this particular thing. This is not just another election. For us, this is a really huge, big deal, and we have people praying and mass people praying. And so I want people, here's the thing, the people and the moderators, if you have a wrench, I need you need to be one of those people who are praying. And even we have our atheist, Britt Bozzi.
I know where Barry's been today.
Does Barry have a wrench?
Britt Bozzi, yeah, but he hasn't been here today. Yeah.
Well, even Barry's praying for Trump. So all I would ask is that you just open your heart and open your mind and start praying for him and praying for your country, and just ask where God is leading this whole thing, because we know that God's doing a great big thing, and we just want to encourage people in doing that. And our moderators reflect that that God is moving in this world right now. So
right,
we're doing the early voting. I said, so if I needed a dog license or a building permit or pay my taxes or my fine, I would have to come down here. She said yes. I was there, you can total up the hours, 2 different days. I kind of got lost in the parking lot, so I did circle the building. There was no signage for City Hall affairs whatsoever at any doors or in the parking lot, and I never saw one person go back there and do any city business. I also was not allowed to use the restroom, which would have been behind that curtain. I was told to go find another place to go to the bathroom somewhere in the city.
Ow. What?
Because they didn't want me to go back there and see. I was also made to sit at Cannon Park on the 24th and 25th for several hours. I was there from 10 to 4 the first day, in front of an open door at 34 degrees the whole day. The second day, they made me sit in the same spot. The second day, just for fun, I saw the first day that at the end of the day, they brought out this bag that kind of looked like a pizza delivery bag. You've heard that term. Some were red, some were blue. Took all the ballots out. 2 people took them out, put them in this bag. They had the key. They went to a room that we could not see or hear and did something with them. The first day, they brought 3 ballot envelopes out and had the inspector general, or chief, they call him, write something on them and took them back. So the second day, I left at 4 o'clock, and I thought, I wonder what they do with those at night. They're not going to leave them in this park pavilion all night long. So I got in my car and went around the block and parked somewhere else where I could see what happened. They brought him out in the bag, and one of the poll workers had the ballots, not the chief, Tony, their name with an I believe, and he threw them in the back of his SUV and off they went.
Wow.
The chief didn't even take them with her. They went with a poll worker. Where they went, I have no idea. The recount you've heard a lot about. It was very intimidating. It was very bullying. I was told on the first Saturday I was there, since I'm short and a little elderly, have back problems, I could turn my chair around and kind of lean on the chair, in the back of the chair, and watch. 2 days later, I was told I was not allowed to do that. They called the cops and hauled me out.
They called the cops on this little 5-year-old lady.
I think because Tony recognized me the day before, because I was at the table next to her, and wanted me out of there.
They called the cops on her.
Look at my notes quickly. There's a lot I could go over with you in the essence of time, and you're all probably getting tired. If you'd like me to come back and speak further with all my experience at all the different locations, I'd be happy to.
Can you turn up a little bit? She's really hard.
I just encourage you that we could put more laws on the books, but they're not following the laws that we have now.
That's so important.
All right, thank you. Our first question comes from Senator Brighteon.
You know,
They're louder.
clearly, you know, I've trained poll workers, chief inspectors, municipal clerks, poll watchers, and I know there's this instinct or this thought as a poll worker that the poll watcher is somehow there to catch you doing something wrong, and they're adverse to it. And I know we have to get over this issue of the poll watcher is there just to make sure the process is followed. Sometimes there to keep an eye on how many people showed up to vote, and if Kathy Bernier did not come in by 5 o'clock on election day to vote, then you all are going to call me and say, do you need a ride to the polls or whatever. I don't think a lot of people understand that poll watchers are not necessarily there to catch someone doing something wrong. And we shouldn't have the idea, the poll workers should not, or the municipal clerks or the chief inspectors, that somehow you're there to catch them doing something wrong, and to not be adverse or defensive when the poll watcher does point out something. So that's lack of confidence, in my opinion, and lack of training, that they're having to swallow their pride and say, okay, she's right. This is what we're supposed to be doing, and do it right from then on. So with that said, you have very specific times, specific places, and specific issues. Would you be adverse to sitting down in a room with some of these people and sit and talk about your experience and what it is that we can do to see? Poll watchers are a part of our electoral process. Poll watchers are as legitimately in the polling place as what the poll workers are, and the chief inspectors. And I think we've got to get that message across through legislation and or through the Wisconsin Election Commission and the county clerks and the municipal clerks, that the poll workers need to recognize that you, the poll watcher, are just as important as they are to the electoral process.
Exactly.
And so, I'm hoping that we can get back to you, find out if some of these election officials would like to sit down and have a conversation about how you were treated and why you were treated that way. Now, that might be visions of grandeur, but it is the holiday season, and I'm optimistic that we can get over this issue some way, shape, or form. And so make sure that, I don't know, do we have your name, your address, your phone number, whatever?
Yeah.
Ron
and William have it.
Okay, and that we can get back to you, because I would love to facilitate an honest to goodness discussion, a respectful discussion.
Right, and I agree with you that I don't know what was said to the poll workers, but during their training, just to identify that watchers will be in, and they're going to be watching, and they're not there to cause a problem or to accuse people. Just a simple explanation and some basic training of what we're there for and why would probably be very helpful.
We have time for one last question. Representative Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe it's not necessarily directed at the witness, but I'm increasingly getting frustrated and wondering what we can actually do. I just want to scream as we look at all of this nonsense.
Yeah.
And there's a short-term problem and a long-term problem. The short-term problem is this current election, and I feel virtually helpless. The longer-term one, if any of this legislation requires the governor's signature, again, I think we're at a loss. I've got no less, as you are doing, Senator Bernier. I'm making a list, and I'm up to 15 different pieces of legislation already, and it's disgusting to me. I'm also vice chair of the audit committee. I'm wondering if that helps. I'm just looking, is there any value in us talking to the joint chairs of that committee and doing a full-blown audit? Again, doesn't help us today, doesn't help us in the next few weeks, but I'm increasingly frustrated at hearing testimony from this witness and all of these witnesses who I find profoundly credible, to take their time to come down here and put up with this. And I'm just frustrated as a representative. I certainly, like many of you, are doing this job because out of the stewardship sense of responsibility that I have. People say, you must have always wanted to do this. I go, no, I don't even know I need to do it now. I'd much rather be sitting down in Florida. But but I feel responsibility that we've got to get up here and do things. And I think it's quality business people and everybody in this room that is lending that credibility. And so, again, I hope that we get some guidance. And I apologize, sir. I know I'm not asking a question, but I'm sitting here getting more frustrated by the minute, the more of this stuff that I hear, wondering, well, what can we do? And so, again, going forward, obviously it'll be legislation. I hope you guys, whatever you put together, I'll sponsor that. And then the second thing is, can we do an audit? What do we do moving forward? So that's just the profound frustration that I'm having over here.
Very good. Since that was a little bit more based on
It's hitting them.
things not necessarily connected to this particular person providing testimony, I'll give you an extra minute. Representative Murphy had a question.
So from all the testimony that we've received, it seems like there's an unprecedented level of bullying going on in these polling places. Now, you're a new poll observer. You haven't done this before.
Not in previous years.
And to me, this is where part of the issue comes in. I believe we have.
I want to answer a few questions on because people are trying to figure this out. So they pay the poll watchers. The poll watchers are volunteers. The poll workers are paid. We had a poll worker who was a retired colonel, Army colonel for
30
3
years.
decades.
Mike, I got it.
And he said that he was told to just push ballots through. It could have a signature anywhere on the page. It didn't have to be at the signature place. He was saying inks were missing, addresses were missing, things were missing, and I was told to just let him go. And he was just angry and frustrated. I wanted them to ask him a question because he was fuming. And when in previous testimonies, the questions kind of reflected the anger and the frustration. So when I just heard that representative say, what can we do now? And that's why these hearings are so important, because everything is a step forward, and it's a step forward because it's a movement. It's a pressure. It's what would you call it? I don't even know.
Well, and Stuart had another question. If they take an oath of office, then it's a federal crime or not?
Well, we were kind of going through that before. It wasn't bobsled. It was another election commissioner. Or he was election commissioner or something.
Yeah.
And he was, I was out there doing the pumpkins when I was hearing it. And I remember him saying when it came to the indefinitely confined, if you say you're indefinitely confined and you're not, and they have found people at, Halloween parties and stuff, that's lying.
And that is
to
a
the government,
federal
and
crime.
that is a felony.
But I think that...
But also what they were finding, though, is that he said it's hard to prosecute the workers because they can plead that they didn't know, and you have to prove intent.
That's exactly right. That's good. Yeah.
We had a lot of new poll workers.
So to answer it, if we could prove it, yes.
Exactly.
Can you prove it?
We have to get in somebody's head. They actually, as the Amistad Project, Phil Klein said, you almost have to get him to confess.
Right.
Because you don't know what's inside somebody's head.
And a lot of new poll observers. And to me, it seems as if some of the people working in the polls have taken advantage of the inexperience of their workers and the people observing them.
Another, I hate to move the mic when you stop. I hate to keep moving, but just recognize, why are there so many more workers, and why are there so many more watchers that would need to be trained? Why are there so many new people? Because they went from a very tiny, minute amount of, they had the polls fine. You show up at the polls, they have you don't need watchers to watch you voting at the machine.
Exactly.
Okay? You don't need poll workers who need to be scrutinized for at the polling stations. Okay, you need them at these absentee ballot counting stations, which over 50% of Wisconsians use, but it was actually supposed to be a very small amount of people. Only 6,000 people in Milwaukee voted with the indefinitely confined in all the years past, and then it just jumps. And so that's hundreds and thousands, 1 million extra votes, I think, in Wisconsin. So that's why there's the extra workers. That's why it was a mess. And for the people to come and say that by flooding all these places, every state in the country,
that it was a beautiful, perfect election.
With the absentee balloting is,
And I think, when you shine a light on the cockroaches, they scurry. Mm-hmm. And this is where we hear so many things about, well, this was done in this corner, and this was done behind this group of people. It's not transparent. It's not.
Did you hear that part?
And Representative Mako, you said that you were very frustrated and didn't know what to do. But I'm here to say right now that I would be more than willing to look at a vote to decertify the group of electors that we have right now. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Wait, pause it right there. And we're going to have to listen to this on 2 time to get through it. But guys, microphone, I know, I get it.
He just said I would look at a vote to certify the electors.
What I love about this is I think that up until this hearing, Wisconsin thought that they were not part of the same stuff
that we're seeing
that we are seeing in these other states. And they are, and we have seen this for the past 4 weeks when we've been with you guys. Every single time one of these hearings takes place, people come into it with their preconceived ideas, their ideas that, you know what, it happened, there's not much we can do, you know, even the Republicans and stuff. And then as they continue to hear and the witnesses build and the stories get more and more fantastical, and there's one element that we are missing that is happening in that room. Have you ever been to a rock concert? It's far different than watching it on television. There is something about the spirit in the room when you are next to a person that is voicing their injustice.
And I think
there's a spiritual aspect there that these people are feeling.
You don't want the Zoom meetings.
No.
Because the spirit is in the room, and like the devil can be in like the, you know, except for when the witnesses come on.
Right.
But like, you got to have somebody in the room, and there's just these people in the room. There's a spirit happening there.
All right.
It's a movement.
RSBN is still going live. Just put it on 1.25. They can handle it.
Time and everything. I have a lot more that I could tell you about, that be it someone that was held to great account in my work environment, responsible for multi-million dollars. I have a lot that, in my viewpoint, would startle you. The things that I could go into in detail, which I won't hear for the essence of time. I'd be more than willing to do that. I did 3 notarized affidavits. I probably could have done 10.
Cindy, why don't you provide those to my office and I'll bring it to.
I have the 3 that I have provided. You have them.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. Let's go on. We have 5 more people to testify yet today. Rick Boss is our next, appearing via Zoom.
Holy cow, 5 more people.
I've lost the light today.
Well, we have a 6 o'clock show this
Anyway.
in a minute. So, okay.
Thanks for having me here. I have the privilege of being the vice chair of the vaunted Milwaukee County Election Commission. And first of all, I want to say that of all these complaints that I've heard here today, I didn't hear them at the actual recount. That would have been a good thing to do, seeing I was there the entire time. I do thank you for having me here. I assume it's because I'm on the commission, but it should be more importantly that I'm here because I'm a citizen. I'm going to give you a little bit of the background on why this is important to me. My parents, like a lot of other people back in the 60s, were involved in civil rights. They met on a picket line while they were working against education discrimination. They also worked against Wisconsin's unfair housing. And most importantly, as it relates to this conversation, they worked to preserve what we as Americans and Wisconsinites need to make sure that the Republic works, is to protect our votes. I remember as a small child going with my mother into the voting booth. I remember being taught that the vote wasn't a right. It was a sacred privilege and responsibility that needed to be exercised. And it was those type of things that were in the forefront of my mind in September when I was asked to comment on not a Supreme Court, but a circuit court decision that came down, affirming that we would use Wisconsin law to run our elections. And I remember thinking that during all the COVID and the pandemic, how important it was that that was going to be the case, because everybody wants to understand that the election is going to be done fairly and it's going to be done by law, instead of like so many things during this pandemic where it's an ad hoc, reactionary, out of apprehension, fear, whatever it is. It's not the time when you're scared and when you're under fire to create new systems. And for whatever reason, as a nation, we allowed this to take place. And for whatever reason, the state of Wisconsin, through administrative auspices, allowed this to take place. The circuit court made the right decision. They did it because it was the positive thing to do for the state of Wisconsin. It was very democratic. It was a victory for the rule of law. And it was how people need to see things work. But a lot of things have changed since September. The systemic racism made evidence by food trucks showing up with New York license plates. I saw them going around giving out food, primarily in minority areas, sponsored by billionaires from outside the state. The implication is that people in those areas somehow need some kind of incentive to exercise their American birthright. To me, it's the softest kind of annoying bigotry of low expectations.
Wow.
And it should be repugnant to everybody, regardless of party. And it is clearly voter manipulation. There are a lot of things that have been said here, and I'm, for the good of the order, I'm not going to repeat a bunch of them. But the practice of ballot harvesting, basically, this needs to end because it implies that people are too busy to exercise their hard-fought and hard-won franchise to show up on time and in person to actually vote.
Oh my gosh.
These things would make our forefathers and our founding fathers nuts. And I know people who were part of the civil rights leadership back in the 60s, and both groups would be absolutely appalled at the laziness by which we approach elections. We owe it to ourselves and the next generation to make this fundamental step in the republic, voting, safe. We owe it to everybody to make it count. The outcome of the election and the outcome of the recounts, I'm going to pause there for a moment. A lot of people expect a lot of things out of a recount. I need to make sure that people understand that the poison is in the pill already by the time it gets to the Milwaukee County Election Commission. If there is voter manipulation with food trucks, that already happened beforehand. If there is mass production of ballots, that happened before it showed up. Those things need to be systemically moved out of the way before there's a recount, because a recount is just going to do that. It's going to recount whatever mess is put in there.
Wow.
But when we do have a recount, all materials need to be available. We have partisan commissions, and we're going to have split votes. Most people expect that there's signature matching in Wisconsin, and there's not. That's something this body can address. Citizens should be allowed to inspect the entire process. They need to be able to see what is going on. Because after all, the vote that we're trying to protect, the vote that we're trying to confirm, is the collective decision of us as a family. And it is what allows us as a republic to go forward. And it is what makes our government legitimate. And if any portion of our vote is tampered with through systemic or individual fraud or neglect or misrepresentation or overreach by administrative authorities, we all suffer. When fraud is found, I hear on the media all the time, they talk about there's no evidence of fraud. I remember in the 2016 recount, as a bipartisan commission, we referred some information to the DA for action, and the DA's response was, I have real criminals to go pursue. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that the media pretends that there's no evidence, but when you can't get a DA to pursue something that is taking away the freedom and franchise from so many people because there's real criminals, there is gaming of the system, there is fraud. And until the DAs step up and do things to make sure that those people are prosecuted, we're not going to get anywhere. If the election and the recount highlight the administrative guidance that somehow becomes super strong, it supersedes the statutes. Excuse me, I've been waiting for 7 hours to testify, now I'm all tongue-tied. Anyway, administrative guidance can't supersede statute. That is the sum and substance of what's going on here. Administrative guidance kept people off the ballot that should have been on. All the time when I hear different cases to decide who's going to be on a ballot or whatever, voter intent is always what's used as somehow the super glue to get things stuck to whatever anybody wants. But voter intent obviously would have allowed the Green Party to be on the ballot, but it wasn't. So this administrative guidance and oversight needs to be brought back into check, and that's something that the body can do. A lot of people want to know all the boogeymen that I saw during the election. Did I see ballots that weren't safeguarded and didn't have initials? Absolutely. Did I witness thousands of cured ballots? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I went through a great deal of effort to make sure that they were siloed off so that they were easily counted, along with the indefinitely confined. Did I witness thousands of ballots being siloed off because they were cured? Yes. And so did anybody else who wanted to tune in, because despite everyone's complaining about how it happened in Milwaukee, and it was different than Madison, at least it was on television and you could see it and make note if anybody cared to watch, because often our democracy goes unseen because it's a little boring, drying to some. To me, it's fascinating, and it connects us all the way back to the Plains of Marathon, when a free people decided that they would not be subject. We owe it to ourselves to continue that tradition. Too many people have fought and died for it. Do we have ballots that were cast by people who claim to be indefinitely confined, who clearly weren't indefinitely confined? I absolutely believe that. I do believe it was to get around the photo ID. And does that cause people to have less confidence in their election? Absolutely. Because the people of Wisconsin voted to have photo ID. And there should be no excuse for getting around it.
They did.
Every generation is called upon to do what is necessary to defend the republic. Right now, the simple ability to vote and have one person, one vote be the order of the day is now that battle. No one of my generation would have thought that simply casting a vote would become such a difficult task. Should we do things to make it easier? Wisconsin and our motto with forward, should we have a holiday? I'm okay with having a holiday. I want to take away that excuse. Do we need to cure ballots? The statute allows for there to be a correction. It doesn't require an administrative oversight to do that. Should a recount have access to applications? Absolutely. You've heard all these things. That's why I'm kind of going through them.
I'm sorry. I'm checking on. I love all the great things, but I want to make sure that, like, at the end of this, I can give you guys some updates. This is huge, so I want to give it to you right now.
Now, wait!
Well, this for me, it's huge.
Oh, come on. No, you can't say it like that then. Don't do that.
Wait, well, I mean, it's nothing that's going to affect the election, like no results or anything. But Vegano is going to do a special video appearance tomorrow at the Jericho March.
You get out! He's gonna show his face?
That's what it says.
No.
That's what Ali said.
No.
I felt like that was big. Like, you know, rather than Supreme Court, blah, blah, blah. I feel like this is way more important.
Oh, my
like the spiritual thing of moving.
Oh,
it says breaking 5 minutes ago.
Stop
5
it.
minutes ago.
Stop it.
Archbishop Vegano will address the Jericho March Stop the Steal Prayer rally Saturday at the National Mall via video.
Get out!
Super rare appearance.
He's been in hiding.
Address the global order pushing the dark winter and how the faithful must fight the infiltration of the church and state.
We have had a conspiracy theory going, like, is Vegano dead?
Is he real?
Is he real? Is this like a, I mean, so, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's big. It was a big one. That was a big one. Ah, wait, Ann wants to know who he is. Oh, Ann.
Okay, Ann. Okay, so go and Google is Archbishop Vegano, Vigano, letters to Trump.
But even before that, we became aware of him when we started covering him exposing the pedophilia in the Vatican.
Going to Trump, going to the Pope, telling him about pedophiles and homosexual relations at the top of in the church hierarchy, and he has been exposing that. He is part of exposing the Pope, and he's a really good man of God. So he started with that.
And then he's written these letters.
Then Vegano, we covered Vegano. Go watch our videos if you can. And then these
We're not Catholic, by the way. Our family is, but we definitely are not. So this is not a Catholic thing.
Here, Catholic means universal church.
Right. This is oh my gosh, this man is so relevant.
What we're dealing with right now is Christians from all denominations coming together, and all the good ones.
Yeah.
So all the good Christians, I mean it that way. Okay, all the good Christians, all the ones that are spirit-filled, filled with the Spirit of God.
We can take it a step further that because of Vegano's, he was the highest.
Pause. Is this Ann who helped out with the computer?
Yeah.
Ann, have you noticed that we haven't lost the signal?
We haven't crashed the whole time.
Thank you.
Thank
Ann.
And thanks to everybody we've had a lot of people that have donated lately, and it's all gone towards tech stuff, and
thank you all.
Right, exactly. But Vegano was the highest ranking cardinal
in America.
Yeah. Right? And so that's
Archbishop Cardinal,
whatever he was. See, again, we're not Catholic, we don't really know. But
Archbishop.
So he has gone into hiding because the Vatican is not happy with what he was doing, exposing all of this stuff. But because he was so high up, he has all of the info and the dirt on the deep state and the the big cabal, the global reset, the globalists. I mean, all of that stuff. He knows it all intimately because he was in there with those exact same dudes.
So he knows what's happening right now, and just, it's going to be epic.
A little bit fast. But there are a number of things that are on the books that are not followed.
Epic.
There are a number of things that should be on the books, like signature matching, that you guys can address. I'm going to sound like I'm being harsh, but I don't intend to be harsh because everything should be civil. But I remember my history books teaching me that Valley Forge was probably not a pleasant place. So when you're going in to defend democracy as an observer and somebody's a little rude to you, let's all cowboy up. Because if you think they're not rude to the only Republican who walks into the Milwaukee County courthouse, it's time to cowboy up. We need to stick together. We need to remember who we are. We need to be the type of people our parents and grandparents would be proud of. We can't control them, but we can control us. So I've cut a lot out because a lot has been said. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them.
Rick, thank you for your patience waiting to testify today. I really greatly appreciate that. I know you had to wait a long time, and that's excellent. We have a question from Representative Sorwell.
Thank you for your testimony, sir, and I appreciate the final comment that you happened to make about, we need to make sure we're doing our jobs even when there are people trying to assault our democratic process, which is absolutely what's happening when they're treating observers that way. But specifically, actually, you mentioned that the counting and everything was online, and I was wondering, because I requested the recording from the online count for Central Count in Green Bay, and they already don't have that video anymore, surprisingly enough. They don't have the video anymore of the counting process. So I'm wondering if Milwaukee still has theirs. Do you know?
I do not know, but I do know I made an effort to reach out to the attorneys to see if they were going to request it for discovery. And I didn't follow up because they're making $500 an hour, whatever they're making out there at that level. So I'm hoping that they did that. And so maybe if necessary, I can reach out for you, or if you have contacts, we can reach out and see if they have that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because it's troubling when municipalities get rid of records.
Yeah, absolutely. I will reach out.
All right, next is Senator Darling.
Thank you very much. Good to see you, and thank you for your passion. My question goes back to the same thing I've sort of been pounding all day, is I'm very concerned about the lack of compliance with state statutes. In some cases, it's a felony. In other cases, it's a misdemeanor. There has to be some consequence for this. And I look at the Wisconsin Elections Commission, when they are in defiance of our statutes, that really, really concerns me. And there has to be penalties, because all these issues we've talked about today, it's not the first time we've heard about the issue of the lists not being updated. And the lists have to be updated. That's one of the things we have in statutes. The attorney generals and but the legislature arguing about whose responsibility is it? What's the Wisconsin Elections Commission who should make sure that those lists are updated? Because that's the beginning, the signatures, all the other abuses we've heard about. You only can have fraud when you don't have compliance with the law. And some people choose to do that individually, but what we see here is a systemic non-compliance, even by our Wisconsin Election Commission. And this is unacceptable. We have to get control of this. And I understand your frustration to the point you're saying, well, we shouldn't certify. I mean, that's a frustration I think many of us are feeling. But this is unacceptable. It has been unacceptable for a while, and I don't know what we can do about it for this election, and I don't want to push it off to the next, but this is totally unacceptable. And I want to know from you, Rick, what do you think we should do as a consequence?
Yes. Are you saying relative to certification, or
no, the non-compliance with state statutes when it comes to election law?
Well, I would suggest, and this is just off the top of my head, I would suggest scrapping every aspect of WEC, reconstituting it. Do not set it up so that the administrative staff wins by default if there's not a 4-2 vote. Getting rid of any bylaws that came from GAB into WEC to whatever the new body would be. And I'm not casting any aspersions on anybody who's staff. I know that the staff that I work with in Milwaukee County are serious and earnest about their jobs. They have their points of view, but they're decent people. They see it differently. So I'm not casting any aspersions on those people. And I go to polls and I watch these people work earnestly, but I also see the law applied inconsistently. Here's the insidious problem as I see it. There have been so many tweaks and the statutes say may this and could this and voter intent that, and that's taken on this whole life of its own. And then as we've gotten lazy, because to me, when you're trying to not vote in person just because it's convenient, that's lazy. Once we've gotten away from having a family conversation once every 4 years for president and showing up and casting a simple vote, the systems that we use in Milwaukee County would make that information. We have an archived paper ballot, we have an image of it, and we have the tally sheets. If everyone was primarily voting in person, we would have a lot more confidence in Milwaukee. I can't talk about Dominion or anywhere else in the state. We would have a lot more confidence in our election, and we would have the results in a timely manner. So you don't see these spikes at 3 o'clock in the morning that everybody wants me to explain while I was sleeping. And yes, it was central count most likely, okay? There's not always a boogeyman. But the problems are so rolled into, it's okay to do red ink. It's okay to fix the address. It's okay to do this, when in fact it's not. The state legislature, in my opinion, needs to put its foot down, add a couple of sentences that says, you will not correct, whatever it takes. You've got a whole bunch of folks that sleep underneath the Capitol that come up with how the words need to be. But everybody on their face understands what needs to happen. It needs to be one person, one vote. That's it. We need to stop trying to find ways to allow people to sneak in the back door. We need to purge our voting rolls. And I know we're not supposed to say purge. Clean them up. Every election, I get people's mail at my house, only during elections, who have not lived at my house in 20 years. And I guarantee it happens all across the state. I see traffic in places that don't normally have traffic because I hear rumors that they're in there, making up ballots. I don't get into any of that until I see it. Because I know for a fact, if we just adhere to the laws that we have now, we can safeguard our election. The Green Party's on the ballot, those people aren't offended. You don't go around curing ballots, then the people who followed the rules don't have to be offended because their vote counted. If somebody professed to be indefinitely confined when they're not, then they stole the ability for somebody else. Play by the rules. And administrative agencies do not trump the elected deliberative body that the people of Wisconsin have put in place.
Yes.
And if you want the extra 2 cents, of course, I'm partisan. I think we should go ahead and appoint our own electors.
Yes.
All right.
I'm boring.
All right. I don't see any other questions. Thank you. I really appreciate you waiting. I know it's been a long day and you've been in the queue for a long time. Our next witness is going to be Lisa Van Wyck.
Oh, that was good.
You can go ahead when you're ready.
Nope. Mic on.
Turn your microphone.
Press the button.
First, thank you for having me. I actually just found out late last night that I was asked to come today, so I hope that what I share with you today helps you in this process. My name is Lisa Van Wyck, and I participated in the Milwaukee recount on Friday, November 20th, and Saturday, November 21st. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my background so you understand in context who I am and why I chose to do so. I was actually born in Pompano Beach, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and moved up to Wisconsin when I was 19 years old. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I grew up in Pompano Beach, went to a small Christian school, and came from a very poor background and humble means. My mother was born in Haiti, and she, in her story, my father was born in Puerto Rico. They met in New York, but before that, she actually moved to New York looking for a better life. She went from dancing, being popular, dancing professionally in Haiti, to sleeping on kitchen floors to make a better life, actually, for herself here. And over the years, she would send back little bits of money to bring the rest of her family here to the States.
Wow.
When I came here, I had gone through a lot of trauma during my time in Florida. So the state of Wisconsin really, truly, I feel like, is my home.
I'm
I love
not
it.
gonna rewind it, but the way that he ended his speech was, let me turn the mic up. Leah's all upset because she had to leave because Uncle Jack was calling her on Facebook and he doesn't know that he's doing that.
It said call you. It told me to call you.
Man, I'm literally gonna go gray. Okay, so anyway, the big punchline. Essentially, he went through this list, this really this PowerPoint list of all these things that they needed to do to fix these problems. Okay, and he was saying listen, I'm not going to go into Dominion or any of this other stuff. I'm not going to believe that till I see it. He wasn't discounting it. He's just just this stuff alone, okay, is kind of evidence that this has gone too far. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, and y'all are going to be like, Michelle, that's not what he said. But the big punchline at the end, because they were kind of asking him, and he's like, and you know what? I'm biased. I think that we should, first he said, we can't certify these votes, or you have to decertify. And then he ended with, and of course, I'm biased. I'm boring, but I think we should I think after all this, we have to appoint our own electors. Awesome.
And there are wonderful people here. And over time, I had graduated from, moved from Miami, Florida, graduated from University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, graduated with a now master's degree in microbiology, with a BS in biology and chemistry. I taught high school biology and chemistry at Appleton, in the Appleton area school district at Appleton North.
Her mom was Haitian, her dad was Puerto Rican,
and got married. And then when they were toddlers, I actually started working for my husband in the construction industry. And for 10 years, I actually became the chief information officer and dealt with the technology there for his company. Then I founded Inspire 365 LLC, which is now named Blaze Sports and Fitness. And I have run that company from scratch, from the ground up, for the last 8 years.
Wow, she didn't look that old.
Blaze gives back to the community. We train champions for life is our mission. We work with youth through professional athletes, helping them be their best and doing everything we can to help them to find their way in life and lead a better life. And I just have to tell you, this year has been, best word for it is probably atrocious. I think that we have issues with our leadership. There have been decisions that have been made this year that have shattered people's lives. There are still, I work with youth and I work with adults who are still confined to their homes. There's 15,000 youth in the community of Appleton alone that have not touched their hallways of their schools. There are people in my office daily who cry, who are dealing with bullying, with the issues that they are dealing with their homes. And yet there's, just today, I got a text saying that there was a decision made at UW-Madison saying that those students, if they go back to school, if they don't test twice a week and show and put it in an app, they will be suspended. So, as John Maxwell, the father of leadership, says, we are leadership sad right now, and it's making me mad because there are too many representatives, too many people wanting to be right than do right. And I just want to let you know that for me, it's not about being a Republican or a Democrat. It's about doing the right thing. So when I saw a lot of decisions happening this year that were hurting people, and when I saw a lot of words being said about fraud that was taking place, even in our state, I knew that after the election, I had to go to Milwaukee and participate and see for myself what truly was happening. And I feel like for today, I'm coming as we the people. It's not for a party, it's about being a voice for the people who are being suppressed. We are here to make sure that there is integrity in this process and that the laws are being followed. Because if there is no integrity in the process and the laws are broken, it is an illegitimate event. It is farce. It is a farce and it is a fake event. And when we can't trust our system and we can't trust the people and our so-called democratically elected officials or the people who are running these events, we are no better than countries ruled by dictators, where a small group of people have all the power and we have no right and we have no voice. There was a gentleman by the name of Dean Knutson who spoke earlier today, and I was appalled that he just came out and said, there's no fraud. Let's put a little pause on that for a second, because we throw that word around all the time. But what does it actually mean? Webster said it. It's wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. It's wrong or criminal deception. The wrong happens before the crime is proven in court. So I'm tired of hearing that there is no fraud. It's clear, sitting here today, listening to all of these people, honest citizens giving their testimonies, that they were wronged. Secondly, he said, the laws weren't changed, but we know that rules were implemented that superseded the laws. Why have laws if we don't follow them? Thirdly, he also said that there's 0 sworn complaints that were filed to the Wisconsin Election Commission. So this is new for me. I come in to do a job to be a poll observer, recount observer. I don't know all the rules. I did go through the training. And I was appalled at what I experienced, which I'll explain in a second. But to say that, oh, there's a 0, I didn't know that there's a place to actually place my complaint. I think you've seen it. There's a lot here that can be learned. There's a lot that can be taught. When I went to the Milwaukee recount, from what I experienced, I believe that was illegitimate. It was unlawful for 3 reasons. I was blinded, bullied, and shackled by big city ballots. And I'm going to say that again. And I think you've already seen from what people have said, but we were blinded as observers. We were bullied and we were shackled by, we as a group, as a state, all of our counties are shackled by what happened in these big cities, and that is wrong.
Wow.
So I was an observer Friday evening, and on Saturday, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Saturday. I actually sat in front of the Wauwatosa tables. And as you know, and from what other people have said, there's 2 tables, and I'll call them a station. And Wisconsin state statutes, and I'm learning more about the statutes, and I find it absolutely amazing, and I applaud you for all that you do, and I thank you for all that you do. When I see in state statute 9.011B11, it says that the ballots and materials must be available for candidates and their representatives to view and offer any objections to a ballot being counted. That they should be made, the election materials should be made available for us to view and object to, and they were not. They were absolutely not. There is no way that we were able to see from 6 to 8 feet away and I was looking at envelopes. We couldn't see names. We couldn't see stickers or tags. We couldn't see what they were labeled as. So there was no oversight. Absolutely no oversight. So if you want, as a committee, want to know that what happened during the recount was valid, you know it isn't. It isn't. And I was trying to do my job, and I would just get up and lean over to try and get anywhere near the plexiglass, because you couldn't see through the plexiglass. It's actually scratched. You can't read anything. And I had a woman sitting next to me who was obviously for the Biden campaign. She wasn't even looking at the table or the ballots. All she did was continue to bully, mock. When every time I stood up to just lean over, she's like, "You can't stand. You can't stand. That's wrong. I'm going to call an official and have you kicked out." And I'm like, "I'm not standing. I'm leaning over. I'm just trying to see. I'm just trying to do my duty and do what I was asked to do." And she kept complaining, and she called an official over. And I said, "How am I supposed to see?" And nothing was rectified. And then I would pull out my phone and I tried to use a magnifying app just to get a little closer. That did not work. And then she would say, "Oh my gosh, she's taking pictures. She's taking pictures. You need to kick her out." She grabbed another official over. And he actually walked away after because I explained to him and I showed him, "I'm not taking pictures. I'm just trying to see." And so this went on for 75 minutes straight. 75 minutes. And I finally went to the bathroom. And as I went to the bathroom, I saw a woman standing in the hallway surrounded by 5 to 6 police officers. And I'm like, "Oh, this doesn't look good. She's by herself, and it looks very intimidating." So I walked up to her, and I just stood there, and I tried to listen to see what was going on. And I heard her explain the story and tell the police officers what happened. And I don't know what the debate or the argument was, but supposedly there was a Democratic election official who she was arguing with. And he happened to take her jacket because he wanted her to leave. He took her jacket and threw it across the aisle. And she went up to him and put her finger on his nose and said, "That's not right. Don't touch my stuff." And the police officers told her, "Well, because he's the person in charge, we have to listen to him, and he wants you to leave. You're being kicked out." And she said, "That's not right. And we should not be treated like this." And you can tell she was very upset. Her eyes were red, and she was completely disillusioned and disenfranchised with the situation that she was being kicked out and being treated like this. And in another instance, on Saturday, I walked by what I call a big city table. There was a gentleman who was standing back away from the chair, and he was a Republican observer. And I just walked up and was like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on at your table? And he said, I can't see anything. He said that there's 4 people behind the table, and there's one of me. How am I supposed to observe and validate or make sure anything's right when it's 1 person to 4? And in addition, they were going through these were ballots at that table really quick. Every second they were flipping them over. He can't see, and he couldn't do anything or say anything. We started walking out to the main hallway together, and he continued to tell me the story about why he was here. And he said that his son, who's in college, there's 13 of them, and they're out of state. They had to send in the absentee ballots, and he said 12. There's one of them was voted independent, and 12 of them voted for Trump. And he's like, make sure you check that your ballots or your votes were recorded, that they were received. All 12 of them were not received. Every single one of them did not count because somebody said, even though they mailed them in, that they didn't. Why is that? Why? I also went back to the Wauwatosa table, trying to do the same thing, feeling like I was getting absolutely nowhere. For you, for our state, for our citizens. And I got up to go to the bathroom again and came across the Milwaukee table, and there was a woman there, and I saw the county clerk, city clerk, county clerk George Christensen, standing over a woman who's sitting down, and she's got her hands up like this, saying, I just can't see. I cannot see. And he's like, sorry, you just need to get better training. Your Republican officials, they're not training you good enough. He was very demeaning. She was upset. She wasn't saying anything loudly. She was just saying, how am I supposed to do my job? And he just dismissed her and walked away. and this is on video somewhere. There was like 3 people who took videos of this interaction, this discourse. She ended up getting up and leaving. So I sat down there to see for myself what was happening at that table. And all I saw were people like this. They didn't care. They just wanted to get out of there. Friday night, when things were shut down early, because there's confusion and there was debates about what should be counted and what the pile should be, the people behind the poll workers were complaining. They're like, "Are you serious? I might have to come back and work on the weekend. Am I going to have to work on Thanksgiving?" I'm like, "I'll be here. This is important." And that evening, and also on Saturday, there's going to be 2 more things that I want to say. There's a couple things that happened. I don't know what the laws are, and I just want to share with you because I want to know from you. So on Friday, when the poll observers were asking the poll workers and a clerk that was walking around, where are the applications? Because those were one of the things that we, as observers, were told to object to if there were no applications with ballots. She said, "Well, I don't have them. They're in my car. They're too heavy. Somebody could help bring them in, sure." And on Saturday, I was walking alongside somebody else who were just wheeling in a little cart, the envelopes and ballots. And I could hear the gentleman say, why is there no police escort for this? I can't even believe this. These materials are important because they represent the will of the people. And when our rules or the people who are in power of enforcing the rules aren't run properly, it's why I feel like I can say this whole thing is a sham. And I would hate to say that because my state of Wisconsin and my country, the United States of America, I absolutely love, and I think that we have so many good things here. But when we allow this, it hurts a lot of families and it hurts a lot of people. So I implore this committee to please listen and act. Please listen, but also act. I listened to the testimony of Phil Klein, Bart Williams, Mike Dreyer. There's a lot of smart people that come through.
You're one of them.
And I'm asking for, we the people are asking for more of an investigation to be done. Bring in the military, have them go through the ballots. I'm sure they do it really fast, really cleanly, and really well. Invalidate those big city ballots if that's what we have to do. And increase the oversight and the quality of our election process. Thank you.
So good.
Thank you for waiting so patiently today, and thank you for your testimony. We have 3 more people left.
No questions
we got
for
Bill
her.
Schneider. So, hey, Bill, let them just finish sanitizing your station before you get to it, and then it's all yours.
After that, you do want them to ask you a question, but you have to know when you're getting to the end, everybody's tired, nobody's had a break. It's really tough to get through these long days.
Well, and her testimony underpins all the rest. And I think sometimes the questions sully it, and it's better just to let it have its power.
My dad is in a nursing home, and he's got dementia very bad. I don't know if you've ever been in a nursing home, but 50% of the people, if not more, are lined up against the wall, and they just sit there all day long. So I was checking my vote online to see if I voted. And I said, just for the heck of it, I'm going to check if my dad voted. And my dad voted absentee at the nursing home, and there is no way in this world he even knew what he was looking at, if he could even mark the ballot itself. So that tells me that there's 45 people in the nursing home, and the manager of the nursing home is in charge of getting the absentee ballots. Well, I think there's a lot of shenanigans going on in all the nursing homes across the state. And my dad's vote was stolen. I know it. We've talked about, I've watched people all day that there's no evidence, but there's evidence that my dad's vote was stolen from him. And I only got a minute to talk. That's all I got to tell you. And I drove almost 80 miles. Something needs to be done about this election. You guys got to step in. We know that there's corruption, and we know that there was cheating and intimidation. And if we do not get that straight in this election, there won't be any chairs like this here, because there'll be one leader out there. We need to get our hands around it, and you got to do it. You got to stand up, and you got to be proud of America. That's all I have to say.
we have a few questions. Senator Bernier.
Thank you so much. I've worked over the years very, very hard to get special voting deputies, both Democrat and Republican, to assist in the nursing homes because this was a huge complaint that we had. And I am disheartened that we did not, if the Election Commission, worked as hard to try to find out ways to follow the current law than to disregard it and create a whole different process that doesn't follow the law. For example, full PPE and whatever else, to somehow make it work. But this has been a huge concern of everyone's, and we are going to have to address this legislatively again in some way, shape, or form. And one of the things that I have thought about, so was your father already voting with a special voting deputy? Was your father already a registered voter?
I believe he was a registered voter, but he hasn't voted since probably, my brother took him to vote 5 or 6 years ago. That was the last time that he voted. So I don't know if he stays registered. I believe he does. I don't know.
No. That's the whole point of deactivating voters who have not actively voted. He may have been on that list to be deactivated because of lack of voter participation over a 4-year period is what they're supposed to do. But every time we try to clean our voter rolls and deactivate voters who have not participated in the electoral process for this sort of reason or others, we always find ourselves in court with basically Democrats challenging the process. I don't understand it myself, other than it gets rid of the opportunity, such as this, to cast a vote for an frail elderly individual who doesn't understand the electoral process. So then the calls come in, such as you may have called. Did you call the Wisconsin Election Commission and ask them about this?
No, I called Jeremy Beansfeld, my state person. I only found out 3 days ago. And the other thing is, it would be different if a person like that would call myself, my brother, my sister, and ask, would you like us to help your father vote? Because we are shut down right now. The nursing home that he's at, I can't even go visit my father because there's only one person that's allowed from our family to go see him. And now they don't even want to ask us if he needs help to vote. I mean, there are good people out there, but like you said, when there's an opportunity to cheat, someone's going to volunteer for that position and make it happen.
That's good.
And there's over 300 some nursing homes in the state of Wisconsin. So if they only harvested 10 votes from each one, it's 3,000 votes.
Mr. Schneider, were you willing to provide your father's name in the nursing home that this occurred at?
Sure. It was my father's William F. Schneider, and it happened in Mount Calvary at the Villa Loretta.
What was that?
The Villa Loretta.
Okay, very good.
In Mount Calvary, it's the only nursing home there.
Sure. Any other questions? Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. And, I ran into a similar situation myself when I was doing doors. So I knocked on a man's door, and a middle-aged man comes to the door, and he asked me, he said, well, how do you happen to stop by my door? And I said, well, we have lists, and the lists are based on who voted. And he said, well, could you tell me, is my father on your list? And I checked the list, found the father's name, and he said, my father doesn't know when election day is, and he doesn't know who's running. And we're trying to work off
And he's an American, too.
Yeah, and we're trying to work off an recent voter list because we want to call on those people that are actually voting. And yeah, so it's very similar, and I can confirm what you're saying. Thank you.
Representative Sortwell?
Yes, I don't know the specifics of the assisted living facility you're talking about, but can you tell me offhand, do you know who operates that? Is it a local person, or is it owned nationally?
It's owned by the Ignatian Hospital, I believe, in Fond du Lac. It used to be run by the nuns, and she ran into problems financially when people live so long from dementia for the need of their care that she got bought out by the hospital in Fond du Lac, I believe.
Thank you.
All right, we have no other questions.
The very first trick that the devil tried to pull on mankind was, did God really say? So, if you ever find yourself in all of this, but did God really say that we would be victorious? Do not allow the devil's lies to get into your head. In the story of Nehemiah, They kept trying to get to him so that they could get him into doubt and get to him into fear, and he wouldn't hear him. He would not entertain or listen to the words that they said. So you guys, if you are struggling, you're not allowed to watch any other channel but ours. I'm saying it here. Okay? You need to be here because you need to be in faith. And this is where you're going to find it. On all of our other platforms, we're on Bitchute. We are on JoshWhoTV. We are on Odysee. We are on Rumble. We are on PARLER. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. ResistanceChicks.com. You need to know how to find us should the worst happen. All right? So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being with me all day long so I wasn't alone. We love you guys. God loves you. Remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory. If it's actually the truth, be here tomorrow, 11 a.m.
Phoebe Long. Thank you, Phoebe. Love your name, by the way. They're one drop of water
next to a flood. That's so good.
And actually, what I read that you said, because I have a little dyslexia sometimes, so I read so fast, is you're one drop of water away from a flood. So, if you've ever seen like a dam break, it's like a drip, 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 and then there's like this, and then it breaks. And you've played the games where you pull the little sticks out, and then you've said this thing where there's just one drop of water away from it gushing everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so the more drops of water there are, the more it's gonna just gush because there's so much there. All right, guys, that's it.
Okay, we're gonna sign off. We'll see you tomorrow. Can't wait. Can't wait. Be here or be square. Have a good rest of your evening. Get something yummy to eat. Because you deserved it after such a hard day at work. You know why? I'm telling that to myself. Good night, guys. Bye.
I was called